Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Boy, I tell you, the Predators last night, just when you think they're going to zig, then they zag, then they zig, then they zag, then they lose to David Rittich. Not good last night. But we got some coaching hires to get into with the Titans. How about that? And not only do we have coaching hires to get into with the Titans, but apparently some of these other teams are struggling to hire some of these coaches. And then some of the Titans coaches from Vrabel staff that most of you don't even like, they're getting jobs with other teams. So make of that what you will. So I want to start with the big one, which is the defensive coordinator position, Denard Wilson. I guess he's the defensive backs coach of the Ravens. They have a secondary coach, and they have a defensive backs coach. I don't know what the difference is. But regardless, the Titans have hired Denard Wilson. Now, a lot of people on Twitter today are celebrating, yeah, that's our guy, Denard Wilson, Jared. That's the guy we need. He's going to come in here, run this defense. He's the top candidate out there. He's a rising star. Never been a defensive coordinator. So when it comes to all of these assistant coaches, everybody will tell me that so-and-so was the assistant offensive line coach when the Ravens had Jonathan Ogden, which then has to lead us to say, well, he's Jonathan Ogden. But at the same time, as much as I hope that Will Levis turns into a great quarterback, I don't look at Joe Burrow and say that's what the Titans are getting with Brian Callahan. And I think we should keep that in mind. So when it comes to the hire of Denard Wilson, a lot of people are excited. I am somewhere in the middle. Now, with most of these coaching hires, I'm kind of in the middle because we don't know if the receiver coach was good or if it was the offensive coordinator's game plan or if that receiver himself is really good or whatever have you. But let's start with the defensive coordinator. So I don't love this hire for one reason. I don't hate it. But I'm not just fawning over the decision to hire Denard Wilson for one reason. And that one reason is because he doesn't have any defensive coordinator experience. And then I look at Brian Callahan's coaching staff and I see a lot of inexperience because the offense is going to be run by Brian Callahan, who has never called plays before and has never been a head coach and has never been a coach of the offense, like the offensive coach. Because, yes, he was the coordinator in Cincinnati, but just like whoever's going to be the offensive coordinator here, they're not the offensive coach. Is it the end of the world? No. But it is something. But the formula for the guru coach has always been, hey, you're going to run the offense, and you're going to go out and you're going to find one of these guys like Vic Fangio, like Brandon Staley, like Wink Martindale, like Dean Pease. You're going to find one of these veteran defensive coaches. You're going to hire them. You're going to flip them the keys the way Andy Reid flips the keys to Steve Spagnuolo, and you're going to say, defense, you. And that is what's going to happen here. But Denard Wilson doesn't have that experience. That doesn't mean that it won't work. It's just not the typical formula that I am used to seeing, right? Sean McVay with the Rams. Wade Phillips as his defensive coordinator forever. Wade Phillips was 85 years old probably when he was defensive coordinating for Sean McVay. Then he leaves. Brandon Staley goes in. Brandon Staley leaves. Raheem Morris goes in. Raheem Morris, who had already been a head coach in 2 spots in the NFL and is going to run Sean McVay's defense. Kyle Shanahan. Now, he brought up DeMeco Ryans, but Kyle Shanahan loses a DeMeco Ryans, and he goes out and he just goes and gets Steve Wilks. Again, head coach, 2 places for Steve Wilks. Hey, defense is yours. Brian Flores last year ran the defense for Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. Another guru coach. Even where Brian Callahan comes from with the Bengals, Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator in Cincinnati, was the interim defensive coordinator with the Dolphins in 2015 on an interim staff in which Dan Campbell was the head coach and Zach Taylor was the interim offensive coordinator. So at least Anarumo had a little bit of experience running a defense. This is something that totally bucks that trend. And so again, just because I don't love it or I'm not jumping for joy or I don't think that the Titans got – now, I can only tell you what the reporters tell us, and this might be true. It might not be true. Apparently, this guy is one of the most wanted defensive coordinator candidates out there. Apparently, the Giants were interested and somebody else was interested, and that might be great. I don't know. But not loving something is also not equal to hating it, and I don't hate this. There are a lot of parts about this hire at defensive coordinator that I absolutely love. The first is that it does sound like he is one of the top up-and-coming defensive coaches, and he comes from the Ravens. And right now, the Ravens play the most physical, badass defense that you can play in the NFL. The year before, he was with with the Eagles. And let's not think about what the Eagles were this year with Sean Desai, but the Eagles last year with Jonathan Gannon. They were probably the most badass defense in the NFL. So that is a good check and a good check. And then the second thing is this. Having a young up-and-coming minority coordinator is good for both the game and the team. Because if you hire an older, experienced guru guy that I'm talking about like Vic Fangio and you flip him the keys, Vic Fangio is not getting a head coaching job in the NFL. Okay? He had one. It didn't work out because they didn't have the quarterback. He had a great defense. But once the defensive guy, I know Dan Quinn just got a job, but for the most part, once the defensive guy gets his first shot, if he's an older guy, he's not getting a second shot. So if you were to hire one of those guys, it would be very hard for me to see Wink Martindale, for instance, getting a head coaching job. But when it comes to Denard Wilson, if he does well, he's going to get a head coaching job. I was shocked by this. Of all these coaching hires, there were 7 jobs or 8 jobs, I guess if you want to count the Patriots, 8 jobs that were open. Do you know that more than half of them were defensive coaches? So he's going to get a head coaching job. And if he gets a head coaching job, one, that's good for the game. Because, again, the reason the Rooney Rule exists, even if it is not effective, is so that teams will make minority hires so it will be more representative of America and of the NFL, which is great. I don't have a problem with that, and I would be shocked if any of you did. Well, I shouldn't say any, but I hope none of you do. And then there's what the Titans get. If the Titans have a minority coordinator who gets hired as a head coach, they get, and I looked this up today, I thought it was 1/3 round, but it's like a win-win right there. Win-win for the game, win-win for you, win for him. It's great for everybody. So it's hard for me to say I like it or I hate it because I've never seen this guy talk before. I've never seen this guy coach before and really looked at it and said, okay, let's see how the defensive backs of the Ravens are doing right now. Let's look at their technique, something that I don't know anything about. I'm concerned about the lack of experience right now at the highest level of the Titans. But I wouldn't say it's a bad hire or that the Titans don't know what they're doing or anything like that. I think it's a fine hire. We shall see. But the lack of experience does make me a little nervous. Again, I can live with it with the coach because if you wait for the offensive guru coach that has head coaching experience to be available, chances are you're going and getting somebody from college. And I don't want Lincoln Riley to coach the Titans. Sean McVay is not leaving the Rams. Kyle Shanahan is not leaving the 49ers. So you can't just go get that guy. But when it comes to defensive coordinator, the formula is that offensive guru gives it to an experienced, farmed-out guy who runs the defense. In this case, while Denard Wilson does have a good resume, It is not the experienced, farmed out, hand the guy off, say, okay, here you go. And that just combined with Brian Callahan's lack of experience and Rand Carthon's lack of experience, that's a lot of lack of experience that the Titans are rolling with. Now, the new wide receiver coach is Tyke Tolbert, and apparently he comes from the Bears. And so my thing on Tolbert is any of these offensive coaches Brian Callahan hires, I'll feel good about. Has a history with him, I guess, in Denver, was coaching in Chicago last year. Good enough for me. Because at the end of the day, the offense is Brian Callahan's offense. Okay? And we will do this like every other team does once you see the team play games where we'll say, oh, the offensive line's not very good. Johnny's the offensive line coach. Maybe they need to do something about that. But again, for the most part, this is Brian Callahan's offense. And so Brian Callahan will be hands-on when it comes to the receivers. And then it's his job to coach his coach at receiver to coach the receivers the way he wants them. So offensive coordinator, I don't care who it is. Quarterbacks coach, doesn't matter to me. Because those guys are just going to be employees on the Brian Callahan ring. And they're going to do what Brian wants. And that's why you brought in Brian Callahan. So I ain't worried about that. But again, defensive coordinator, this separates from the model that I really was embracing, but I'm not going to complain about it because he might be a great defensive coordinator. Arthur Smith had never called a play. In fact, most people didn't even know who Arthur Smith was, and I'm not even sure Arthur Smith got the job as offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans, that he gets that job if Matt LaFleur going to Green Bay isn't trying to take him with him to be his offensive coordinator. Vrabel, getting mad at LaFleur, say, no, I'm going to make him my offensive coordinator, and on you go. But so far, we'll keep our eyes on that coaching search. There is one position in particular. There's one thing I actually don't necessarily love about the Titans coaching staff so far that I would say maybe I'm a little, I won't say disappointed, but, just I'm skeptical of, which I want to get to on the coaching staff, and we'll do that. 615-737-1025 and your phones, as always, Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. That's right. I cannot pick against Mahomes. Now, if he's playing Joe Burrow, it'd be really, really tough for me, but he's not playing Joe Burrow. He's playing Brock Purdy. So I have a hard time picking against Mahomes here in the Super Bowl. FanDuel has many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today and you get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. 21 and over in President Tennessee. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
What is your philosophy on defense? We heard a lot about your offensive stuff, but what's your defense philosophy?
Yeah, there's a lot of things you talk defensively. We're working through, what that's going to look like for us by the types of people we're going to bring in. But at the end of the day, you got to have a very flexible and adaptable defense. You still have to be physical. You still have to run and hit. You have to tackle well. You have to force errors. There's a lot of things you can do that in the coverage structure game, in the pressure package game, where it makes it really hard on an offense. And so I know it gives me problems. I know the hard defenses to game plan against, and those are the things that I'm looking for in the style of defense we're going to play. Without getting too far down a bunch of characteristics, don't mean much until we put the pads on, but that's what I look for. Is what makes it hard for me as an offensive coach. That's the style of defense that I'm looking for.
There you go, that's Brian Callahan, and apparently that's what they're going to go with Denard Wilson as the defensive coordinator. And I got one concern here. Paul Kaharski has been keeping up with all of the Vrabel assistant coaches that are all getting fired. And it's like, the outside linebacker coach got fired. Yes, that's what happens when you fire a coach. You pretty much fire the entire coaching staff too. But there was one coach that I was wondering about that I was a little surprised is no longer with the team. Now, I did notice that in the reporting it didn't say he was fired, but maybe his contract ran out. I don't know. But Tom Quinn, the special teams coach, and Brian Callahan can hire whoever he wants. I don't have any attachment to any of those Vrabel coaches, but I did like Tom Quinn, the special teams coach, because when he took over for Craig Aukerman, he got up to the podium and he actually answered questions directly. Like, oh yeah, our punter did not do a good job of directionally punting. Oh yeah, we have to catch those punts or else we're going to lose games. And we're going to put somebody else back there to catch those punts. Just simple stuff that the guy before him, Craig Aukerman, would never do. And so I had a level of comfort with Tom Quinn because he had been the special teams coordinator for the Giants for forever. And yet he's not back. And of all the coaches that I care about, the one that does matter to me, you know this, it's special teams coach. Because I would say I care about defensive coordinator more than I care about special teams coach. But how many of these games are lost stupidly on special teams? So many games in the NFL, whether it's muffing a punt, missing a kick, getting a kick blocked, the crazy stuff that happens on special teams. I guess the Lions don't have to worry about it because they don't ever they don't ever kick, but every other team, like, for instance, the 49ers use a third-round draft choice on their kicker, and he stinks. And yes, special teams coach is involved when it comes to who should our kicker be. Now, he may not be the one that's responsible for coaching the guy how to kick the ball through the uprights, though I do think there's probably some part of that's his job. But somebody there has to be able to pick them out. And so I'm not saying Tom Quinn's great or whatever, but again, it's one thing to have no experience for the head coach doing what he's going to be doing, but that's okay. We can live. That's fine. That's okay, whatever. It is another thing when it comes to the special teams coach. If he doesn't have experience, then I get a little nervous here. Because I just don't want the Titans to lose games anymore because of special teams. I'm not asking for great special teams play anymore. The Jeff Fisher teams, and I know that Jeff Fisher used to drive me and a lot of you crazy, but the Jeff Fisher teams used to have really good special teams. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking to not lose a bunch of games on special teams. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on some of these coaching hires, whatever you would like. Skeeter from Spring Hill texts in and says just because they haven't run a defense before does not mean that they won't be a good coordinator. An older coordinator is usually stuck in their ways, and he wants somebody who is adaptable and willing to change. So I don't exactly know what that means. I understand what you're saying. And yes, younger coaches absolutely are more pliable than older coaches. Older coaches, hate to say it, old dogs can't learn new tricks. But what does that mean? He's going to be more adaptable? So it's like, hey, we want to run this system. Okay, Brian, I can run this system. Because quite frankly, I'd rather hire the guy for the system. To say, hey, you're Vic Fangio. You're a great defensive coordinator. we're going to run your system because you're the expert at running your system. Coach Shoup once told me a story. Yeah, I'll say it on there anyways. Coach Shoup told me a story that when he was hired at UT, Butch Jones had basically said, like, hey, I want you to run your defense. And then when he got there, Butch Jones was like, actually, I want you to run my defense. And he was like, you want me to run your defense? And for him, he said it was like trying to speak French. Now, I don't know if it's that drastic or not. That's what he said. And so I'm sure Denard Wilson has a defense. So when we say he's more adaptable, maybe, but in terms of like learning a system or what, I mean, when you get hired as defensive coordinator, you got the system you want to run. Just like when you get hired as offensive coordinator or head coach and offensive head coach, you've got your system that you want to run. Like Vrabel, for instance, when he got hired here as head coach, he had a defense he wanted to run. He went and got a guy from New England who ran that defense. Texter into the text line says, who do you think hired the defensive coordinator, Ran or Brian Callahan? That's a good point. Because as soon as I saw the Titans last week were interviewing Denard Wilson, I said, okay, well, I'm going to do what everybody else does, and I'm going to go look at the guy's background, and I am going to say, okay, let's see what he's, where has he been? And I saw that he had been with the Rams. And I know that Ran Carthon had been there with the Rams. And I do find that to be fascinating because the coach, I believe, should be in charge of the coaching staff. But the GM's ultimately in charge of the team. And so it could be one of those things where Ran knew Denard Wilson and knew that he'd be a defensive coordinator candidate and went to Brian Callahan and said, what do you think? You guys played the Ravens twice last year. Let's interview him. You tell me what you think. And I think that had happened with some of Jeff Fisher's assistants. I mean, Les Steckel was the offensive coordinator, later head coach in Minnesota when Floyd was there, and he was the offensive coordinator here. At first, he was the receivers coach. Then he was the offensive coordinator here when the Titans went to the Super Bowl in '99. He wasn't a Jeff Fisher guy. He's a Floyd Reese guy. So that would be a good sign of collaboration. And if it works out and it was a Ran hire, then that would be something good that Ran did. And let's hope that that's the case. Ralph is up next here on our program on the Titans' new coaches. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Ralph?
Hey, buddy. How are you doing?
Good. Go ahead.
One thing they definitely they cannot do this. A new coach is a new defensive coordinator because I see they're making positive steps. Is to bring number 26 back. That would be awful, and that will bring them a bad luck.
So I don't think you have to worry much about Christian Fulton coming back. I will say this, though, as far as Denard Wilson and Ran Carthon are concerned, that defense got holes on it. I mean, there are a lot of holes on that defense. The secondary is horrible, and I agree, I don't want Fulton back. The inside linebackers are backups, and Azeez Al-Shaair is a free agent. The defense lacks depth, so they will have their work cut out for them. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, and I don't think any of us should expect Christian Fulton back with the Titans. But strange, I wouldn't say stranger, strange things have happened. 615-737-1025. Dan Quinn is the head coach of the Washington Commanders. Good for him. But it now means that every job is filled up. And there is one guy in particular who does not have a head coaching job this year. Gee, I wonder who. We'll discuss that next here on Stillman and Company. Window Nation, that's right. I was actually talking to my parents earlier today, and I heard that they've got to get some windows replaced. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Window Nation. You can go online, windownation.com is the phone number. If you feel like you've got leaks coming through because the panes aren't right, if you've got, you got to put your hand on the window to see if the cold air is getting through, whatever it may be. Homes get old, windows need to be replaced. And if you've got windows that you need to replace, you need to talk to my friends at Window Nation, because with their experts at Window Nation, replacing those old windows are easier and more affordable than you think. That's right. That's what makes Window Nation so great, is that they've got, just great offers all the time when it comes to what they want people to do and how they want people to, replace their windows. And so with Window Nation, replace your windows and save big with 50% off all window styles. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. Again, 0 down, 0 interest, no payments for 24 months. That's 2 years. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder why thousands trust Window Nation. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com to schedule your free in-home estimate today.
We have some breaking news. The Washington Commanders have identified their next coach. Sources say it is Dan Quinn, the Cowboys defensive coordinator, of course, former Atlanta Falcons head coach, took the Falcons to the Super Bowl, now gets a second shot at it. For the Washington Commanders, it was a long search. It was a thorough search. The final three candidates were Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Lions, Anthony Weaver, really impressive defensive line coach, associate head coach for the Baltimore Ravens, and Quinn, who really was a top candidate along with Ben Johnson for the Commanders all along. He has improved. He has gotten better. He's learned a lot since his last stint as a head coach. Obviously, what he did with the Cowboys defense, save for the last game, really impressive this year. But so much of this is about leadership. It is about pairing a first-time GM with a veteran head coach. That is what Washington gets. Now, the Cowboys have an opening at defensive coordinator. I would also expect, as colleague Steve Weiss mentioned, Joe Witt to go with Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator. He's currently Cowboys' secondary coach, but now a new opening in Dallas as well.
I'm surprised Ian Rappaport didn't say right there, and just that lauding of Dan Quinn didn't drop in there. A lot of people around the league think that this could be like when Bill Belichick had his first stint in Cleveland and then went to New England, that's what Dan Quinn to the Commanders is like, because good grief was he talking about how great Dan Quinn is with the Commanders. So I have two thoughts on this. Number one, when I was watching the Senior Bowl on NFL Network today, and I saw that Dan Quinn was hired as the Commanders coach, I thought, I hate this move for them. I mean, they're going to be drafting a quarterback with the second overall pick. And because Adam Peters is their general manager and he comes from San Francisco, they're probably going to hire one of these Shanahan guys, right, to be offensive coordinator. So Clint Kubiak, for instance, who is the new Bobby Slowick, they're going to hire that guy to be the offensive coordinator under Dan Quinn in Washington, Gary Kubiak's kid. So let's say that it's exactly like Slowick in Houston. And with that number 2 pick, they're going to draft the quarterback. And that quarterback is probably going to be good because he's going to have the San Francisco coach working with him. And again, Adam Peters knows who's a good San Francisco offensive coordinator type coach. So then at that point, if he's good, they'll eventually lose him. I know that the Texans didn't lose Slowick this cycle, but if Slowick has another year like he had this past year, he will be the hottest candidate in the NFL. So that's the first thing, because again, as Dan Quinn has already proven, when he's got the guru offensive coordinator, Matt Ryan can be league MVP. When he's got Steve Sarkisian replacing him, not so much. Dirk Cutter after Sark. But then that takes me to this. Vrabel. So Dan Quinn getting the job in Washington means no job for Mike Vrabel. In this cycle, there were 8 open jobs. Now, the Patriots, a lot of people think, was already predetermined. Gerard Mayo was going to be that guy because it was in his contract, the succession plan from Belichick. But I think we should count it because they had a coach and they have a new coach. So in this cycle, Atlanta, Carolina, the Chargers, Commanders, Patriots, Raiders, Seahawks, and Titans. Of those 8 jobs, 5 went defense, which, by the way, I'm shocked about because I think the game is headed more towards the Zach Taylors, Matt LaFleur's, Kevin O'Connell's, Sean McVay's, Kyle Shanahan's, and not so much the defensive guys, but DeMeco Ryans did a good job in Houston. Atlanta, defense. Raheem Morris chose him over Vrabel. Commanders, defense. Dan Quinn. Patriots, defense, Gerard Mayo. And this is the one where I know Vrabel didn't interview for that job. Chose him over Vrabel for sure. Because that was probably the discussion they were having. Raiders, Antonio Pierce, defense. Seahawks, Mike McDonald, defense. Chose him over Vrabel. No job for Vrabel? Now, I'm a little on the fence with this. Some of these Titan fans are out here just celebrating that Mike Vrabel doesn't have a job like it matters to their life, and I get it. You know, everybody was told, we were finger wagged, you know, if you fire Mike Vrabel, he'll have a job tomorrow. By the way, I didn't listen to Robbie and Joe this morning. Ian, did Charles Robinson address his multiple first-round picks for Vrabel?
I missed Charles today.
So I don't know if that was brought up because Charles said that it would start at 2 first-round picks for Vrabel. Teams would fire their coaches for Vrabel, Diana Rossini said. So you were right about that. And I was right about that. I mean, I didn't think that Vrabel wasn't going to get a job. I just didn't care. So when everybody told me, if you fire Mike Vrabel, he'll have a job tomorrow, I was like, great. I don't care. Give him a job. I don't think he's Vince Lombardi. But he didn't get a job tomorrow. Now, at the same time, I'm not sure that there's any way to really rationalize the fact that Mike Vrabel didn't get any of the 8 jobs when 5 of them went defense. I can rationalize why Bill Belichick didn't get a job. Bill Belichick is old. Bill Belichick is rigid. Bill Belichick's success has all come with Tom Brady. And Bill Belichick is 100% going to do things Bill's way. Period. It's hard for an organization that has a general manager to say, okay, let's bring in Bill Belichick. The Chargers were probably the one team that could do it because they were set out on giving Jim Harbaugh total control because you can't bring in Harbaugh without that. And they were only going to do that for Harbaugh. Washington, Adam Peters gets a job. He's not going to give Belichick power. This is his first job ever. The last thing he's going to do is bring in Bill Belichick so Bill Belichick can box him out like Charles Barkley. So I get that. Pete Carroll, old. Ben Johnson, I'm not sure I totally understand why he decided to stay in Detroit or what that may have been about, but whatever. But for Vrabel to barely even get sniffs, especially when Atlanta hired Raheem Morris, a defensive coach who's got past history, and his past history is worse than Vrabel's as a head coach. The only thing I can say is, well, maybe Mike Vrabel's just not that desirable after all. You know, again, he'll get a job tomorrow. It's not like Vrabel came out right away and said, hey, I'm going to take this year off. He didn't say that. He interviewed for those jobs. Now, I don't know if he had to interview for the jobs. I don't know the language in his contract. Sometimes these contracts say things like, hey, in order to do this, you have to, in order to get paid, you have to try to get employment. Maybe. I don't know. And I don't think Vrabel is done coaching or anything like that. But no job for Mike Vrabel this year. Got to tell you. I'm pretty shocked. I mean, again, I'm not one of these people that said, oh, yeah, Titans fans, you guys should be thankful that Mike Vrabel's your coach. I mean, I was calling for them to fire him. So I'm not upset about any of that. And so when these other people don't like Vrabel, these other teams don't like Vrabel, it's not like that's shocking to me. But at the same time, I did think he was going to get a job. So a lot of you want to weigh in on that, so we'll get to it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Let's talk basketball. Tune in tonight on 94.9 The Fan. Vanderbilt women's basketball takes on Mississippi at home. Pregame 6:15, tip-off 6:30. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app. And then this Saturday, Vandy basketball takes on Missouri at home. Pregame at 2, tip-off at 2:30. Coverage is also available on 102.5 The Game's app and at thegamenashville.com. And tune in to 93.3 Classic Hits this Saturday as MTSU takes on Western Kentucky on the road. Pregame 6:30, tip-off at 7. Coverage also available on the 93.3 Classic Hits app and at 93.3classichits.com.
But now that we have these two decided and there's no other head coaching gigs open, it's like Vrabes, Belichick, Ben Johnson, Slowick. We're all just assuming they're going to wait until next year. This is just a next year type thing, or what do you think happens with Vrabes and Bill?
Well, they're going to have to sit down and decide exactly how they want to approach the season. And everybody handles it differently. There are various ways to go about it. Both men are under contract, so it's not like there's any rush. Both men are well-known and have great reputations. People know that they're out there. I think if it were me, I think you want to stay involved in the game to some extent. You want to go around in training camps. You want to visit with some organizations that you know and respect, with people that will let you kind of watch and observe for 3, 4, 5 days at a time, maybe a week. Then maybe you want to work with one of those teams just as a consultant in an advisory role, breaking down film, making suggestions, whatever it may be. Because when the next cycle rolls around, and even before then, frankly, the names that are going to be on the tip of everybody's lips will be Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll.
There you go. That was Shefty on Pat McAfee today. So it's like, well, this is going to change all next year because these teams are going to want all these guys. They didn't want them this year. Now, you know how they do this in the NHL? And I'm not like a big Vrabel defender. Don't think I need to say that. I think you guys probably know that. But you know how in the NHL they can fire a coach and then hire a new coach and give him a 3-year contract, and the next day he's behind the bench? I could see Vrabel being that kind of coach, right? The Eagles get into the season, they're 2-5, things are spiraling out of control. A.J. Brown's going crazy, all of that stuff, and it's like, all right, Sirianni's out, Vrabel's in. Now, I don't know how you'd be able to do that with the Rooney Rule, but I think that would be that would be something that could be possible for Vrabel if it were feasible. But everybody acts like everybody's going to wait 2024. Oh, everybody's going to want Belichick. Everybody's going to want Pete Carroll. Everybody's going to want Vrabel. They didn't want him this year. And Bill and Pete ain't getting any younger. To the phones, Texter says, Diana Rossini may be out of a job soon. These old school ball coaches loved her. I don't think Belichick or Pete did. But I will say this. I mean, the way they talked about Vrabel, like at Thanksgiving on, if you sat down with Diana at Thanksgiving when she put out the Ready, Steady, Vrabel story, which is not her fault because they did tell her that. But if you sat down with Diana and you said, Diana, not only is Mike Vrabel going to get fired in Tennessee, but Mike Vrabel is not going to get a job in this hiring cycle, I do not think that she would believe you. I think she would have thought that you were from Mars. As far as the reporting is concerned, that's for you to judge one way or another. Jack says the national media PR for Vrabel was incredible. What happened to capital J journalism? I can't knock you. Here's what Vrabel, I think, is. Derrick Henry's going to be an example of this. You know what I'm talking about. The TV players. Remember when the Jets signed Dalvin Cook? And it was like, Dalvin Cook is going to the Jets. Oh, my God, he's going to make such a big difference. And then he didn't. And there was a reason why Minnesota didn't want to pay him anymore. And there was a reason why none of these other teams in the league really wanted him. The TV players. Julio Jones for you. Where TV is obsessed. And most of the NFL is not. That's Mike Vrabel. We see the warts with Vrabel, right? We know the problems with the coaching staff. We know that he couldn't get offensive coordinator right after Arthur Smith left. We know that Vrabel loved Aaron Brewer. We know all this stuff about Vrabel, special teams and Ackerman and everything. We know all of that. TV doesn't. TV likes him because he won Super Bowls as Tom Brady's teammate. TV thinks he's a man's man. Well, maybe the rest of the league is a lot like us and a lot less like TV. Just like with these players, when Derrick Henry hits free agency. Oh, Derrick Henry is going to command $15 million a year. If you get Derrick Henry, you've got a Super Bowl contender. Derrick Henry signs July 13th, 1 year, $3.5 million. Or, no, you know how it would be reported, Ian?
How's that?
Up to.
Up to, that's right.
Derrick Henry, 1 year, up to $8 million. Texter into the text line says, honestly, Jared, I'm really surprised that after Vrabel for so long, you couldn't see what a really bad head coach he was. He had a horrible plan. A great leader of men with a bad plan is still a loser after covering Vrabel for so long. Let me say this. I thought it was time for Vrabel to go. I don't think Vrabel's a bad coach. There are two different things. I think Ken Wisenhunt's a bad coach. I do not think Mike Vrabel's a bad coach. And I have never said that. I have never said Mike Vrabel was a bad coach, and I do not believe that Mike Vrabel's a bad coach. Would I have hired Mike Vrabel in this cycle? Probably not. But if I was a team like Buffalo or Philly or the Chargers, I'd go with Vrabel. You just have to know that when it comes time to hire a coach, where today's game's headed, we're going in the offensive route. I thought we were headed in that offensive route, of everybody's going to want to hire these Bobby Slowicks because they don't want to miss out. And then Raheem Morris started getting jobs. And it's like, maybe not. Texter says, I know you will never admit that you took it personally, but can you at least admit that you don't like Vrabel? No. I like Vrabel. I don't think Vrabel likes me, but I like Vrabel. That doesn't mean, again, I think sometimes we hear these opinions that come out of my mouth, and so all of a sudden we assume that it means something more than what it is. I think Vrabel's a good coach, but I don't want him to coach my team. I don't think Vrabel likes me because I was on his ass all the time. But that doesn't mean that I don't like Vrabel. I like him fine. And let me just say this, and this is going to be the last time I say this ever. I did not care about the think like a man and, Jared, you'll never think like me at the press conference. I did not care. In fact, if I cared, it was that I liked it because I knew that it would be good for the radio show, and it was. Okay? Now, look, I'm not one of these people that roots for my team to lose because I want my team to win. And so even if losing would be good for the radio show, and if you look at our ratings, apparently it was this year, but while I'm not somebody who's going to sit there and hope that they lose for my personal gain or whatever, if the coach wants to pick a fight with me and then it's going to be like, okay, let's talk about it, that's a good thing. That's a good thing in radio. So I don't care about those little interactions and everything else. In fact, you can barely hear it because the Titans don't do like the microphone in the crowd of these press conferences. But Vrabel's like, Jared, you'll never think like me. Whatever you're thinking, I looked at him and smiled. I was like, think the opposite. The old Sally rule that Floyd used to talk about. So I do not care about that. What I care about is the fact that Mike Vrabel showed up at training camp with this crap offensive line and sat on his hands to do nothing about it and pretended like it wasn't a problem. That when everybody's like, hey, Andre Dillard stinks, Mike, what are you going to do about it? Hey, Arden Key's really, really good. That's why we've got what we've got. That's why we were blah, blah, blah. That bothered me because I'm watching with my own eyes that Andre Dillard can't stop Arden Key, who runs right around him every play. And then they're going to line him up one-on-one with Myles Garrett and pretend like, what are we supposed to do, Jared? That is the stuff I don't like. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. One texter says, you're wrong. Vrabel took a Super Bowl-ready team, cost them a trip to the Super Bowl, and led them right into the dirt. Whoa. A Super Bowl-ready team? You lost to Brady and the Patriots 35-14. Let's not get too carried away. TD joins us from the Senior Bowl. What'd he see? Who's he like? Who is starting to become part of the TD group of the draft. We'll do that next with Ron Davenport here on Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. Super Saturday is coming up right around the corner. Join us on Saturday, February 10th at New Heights Brewery in Nashville from 1 to 5 for this fun, family-friendly Soup Fest benefiting the Nashville Predators Foundation. Tickets are only $10. Enjoy live music, games for kids, and come sample soup from Bavarian Beer House, Mama's Java Cafe, City Tap, and more. To purchase tickets and to see all participating restaurants, go to thegamenashville.com/soup. And you can also enter to win tickets by texting to win tickets to Super Saturday by texting in the keyword soup, S-O-U-P, right now to 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. It is the TD Power Hour on a Thursday. TD joins us, Teron Davenport, brought to you now by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. So TD is live in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. TD, let's start right here at the top of the Senior Bowl. What you see so far, how you like the talent crop that we're looking at for this year's draft so far.
I'll tell you what, man, there's a lot of talent down here, whether you're looking at in the trenches, out there on the flanks, receivers and DBs. It is really good, man, to see a lot of these players out here able to do the things that they're doing, man. And for a team like the Titans, who are in need of help, at O-line and receiver and even DB, this is a good group just down here alone.
So I was over at my parents' house, and I was watching Senior Bowl practice, and my mom asked me, she goes, so what is this? I was like, well, it's like the college, the college prospects that are all out there. She goes, so these are all the best players? I go, well, they're not the best players necessarily aren't there. Like Caleb Williams isn't there and so on and so forth. So I was like, it's kind of like the second best players, but I didn't feel like that was a good explanation. So for everybody who doesn't understand like what quality of player we're talking about at the Senior Bowl, what would you use as kind of that explanation?
Yeah, that definitely wasn't a good explanation. I wouldn't call the guys here second best. There's guys, there's top 10 guys here, top 15, even top 20, so you look at a lot of the prospects here. I would have just said it's a gathering of some of the best talent across the nation, and that's exactly what you have. So that's how I would explain it, and it's an opportunity to get, for scouts to get their hands on these guys, to watch them throughout the week of practice, see how they respond to coaching and see how they compete. For the quarterbacks, you see how they lead and things like that. So it's a huge opportunity to, just see guys up close and personal.
So who's starting right now? Let's talk about these positions of need for the Titans and the depth of what we're looking at so far. And obviously the one that everybody probably wants to start with are the offensive tackles.
Yeah, so I guess, I started with this. There's a guy by the name of Patrick Paul. He's out of Houston, 6'7", 333. 36-inch arms. And it's funny, at the media day yesterday, he said that he took up boxing when he got to Houston, and it helped him learn how to use his hands and just that hand-eye coordination. I watched him during team period yesterday, and there were a couple plays where they had him pull and get out in space. And he's a left tackle, by the way. Got out in space, and, he was moving, and he went and got the DB, put his hands, broke down, put his hands on him and drove him underneath the turf, to give the running back more space. And I watched him in one-on-ones. He was pretty impressive there. So I'll start with him. Tyler Guyton is a guy coming in. I definitely wanted to see what he could do. I talked to Jim Nagy, and that's the executive director here of the Senior Bowl. And he said that he had more upside than Olafashano and Joe Alt. Now, I'm not going to go that far.
Where is he from?
He's from Oklahoma, and he's a right tackle, very athletic, and you wouldn't think that he's 328 pounds, but he is, and he's a very well-built athlete. And they actually flipped him to the left side, and he had a little bit of trouble with the Ole Miss edge, Cedric Johnson, but when he was on the right side, he looked really good. So that is another one. There's a lot of offensive linemen down here that I liked. One guy I was a little disappointed in is Jordan Morgan, and he's out of Arizona. He's a left tackle. And I was surprised just how he struggled a bit on Tuesday, but it happens the first day. So that's another one. Talise Fuaga is a very impressive. He's more of a right tackle, but you talk about power and just getting his hands on people, man. He gets his hands on you, it's over. So he was another one. Roman Wilson, it was funny. So one of the top corner here, Keon Mitchell from Toledo, he's going to be a top 20 pick. But they gathered, and this was for the national team, not the one that coach Terrell Williams coached. It was the other team, and they gathered the guys after practice, towards the end of practice, and they had a competition period. And Keon Mitchell, they called his name, told him to come in the middle of the circle, and he said, they said, call somebody out. And I just happened to be standing there by the circle, and he called out Roman Wilson from Michigan, a guy who I've talked about on your show before. And Roman turned to me and was like, watch this. He went out there. They went one-on-ones. He gave him a crazy move. And then he got open, made a one-handed catch, and he was shining in one-on-ones a lot. You know, he's a vertical guy, kind of caught up in that Michigan run for his offense, but he told me he's going to run 4.2, so that means he'll run low 4.3s. And the speed that he has is definitely evident. Xavier Legette, I've talked about him. He's a guy, you know, very similar to A.J. Brown as far as play style. He had a solid week. He did come out of practice today, so he practiced half of it. So you have him, Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. You talk about a route runner that's really good at tempo on his routes and just getting open. He's a slot guy. He's another one. I mean, there's a lot of, hey, look, you're a Louisville alum. You know, they had a receiver out of there, Jamari Thrash, who I'm sure you're familiar with.
He's awesome. He's really good.
Not the biggest receiver, but just efficient. Like, that's the one word I could use to describe him, efficient. And he made a beautiful catch in the corner of the end zone. You know, he's somebody that his routes are precise, they're crisp. And like I said, he's just an efficient player. So those are a few. I mean, Javon Baker out of UCF is a guy I wanted to see have a bit better of a showing, but it was one of those things where you go in expecting so much. And so a guy goes out and does solid, and you're like, but he's a good receiver. I think he's someone, you know, in the fourth round could be around and be a good player for somebody.
TD, where do you look at the Titans have so many holes on defense outside of like defensive tackle that they could really go all over the place throughout the draft on defense. What have you seen out of the defensive guys? Who's kind of stood out so far at the Senior Bowl?
Oh, man, I tell you what, I mentioned Talise Fuaga, you know, the Oregon State offensive lineman. Well, he and Penn State, I don't know if you've gotten to watch Penn State tape, but like for me, when I watch that tape, it takes a little bit longer because I got to watch end zone 2 or 3 times and then watch the secondary 2 or 3 times too. So like triples the length of the game. And the reason why I got to watch the end zone copy is because of Adisa Isaac. And this is a guy coming off the edge. He played a lot of 4-3, but now they're allowing him to play 3-4, like, you know, as a stand-up guy. And he projects to be that in the league. And he and Fuaga, they were getting it in. And there was one point in practice, he had 3 straight reps during team period where so during one-on-one, he tried to, you know, use the speed off the edge, dip the shoulder, and Fuaga, as I said, he puts his hand on you, it's over. And that's what he did and drove him into the dirt. So then in team period, he took that lesson and he looped it over to team period, and he gave him a little move and then the speed and got to the quarterback. And then that very next rep, speed to power, and then he went back to a different move to get speed off the edge as well. And he's somebody, you watch his tape, number 20 on the Penn State tape. And you look at the Ohio State game, look at the Michigan game, this dude is nothing but pressure. So he's somebody that stood out. Michael Hall, speaking of Ohio State, you know, a defensive tackle, he's a bit undersized. That's why I'm curious what Denard Wilson is going to do, you know, as a DC, because how he aligns these guys. Now, obviously, it's all multiple. You know, you'll see different looks, but if there's space for a guy that's not 300 pounds as a D tackle, but very sudden and disruptive, he's someone I would look at, Michael Hall out of Ohio State. And you could watch actually the Notre Dame game where he was going against the polished O-lineman there. He stood out, and he's someone here, you know, watching him run down plays on the other side of the field, running with the quarterback, matching hands and knocking it down, and even just getting a quick pressure. So those are a couple guys on the D-line. I'm trying to think of another edge that stood out. If you want a project guy, Austin Booker, out of Kansas, you know, this guy coming off the edge, he's another one that brings a lot of juice. He's 6'4", 240, but he's another one that I think could be an option for the Titans. If you're talking up front, now if we want to talk secondary, that's a different story. But I mean, those are 3 guys that stood out to me just as far as in that front 7.
Tini, when you look at these guys, is it too early for you to look at a guy and say, you know, that might be a 3rd round right there. This guy might be a 2nd rounder. This guy, because thinking from the Titan standpoint, with the different picks that they have, it's like the anxiety of not knowing, you know, who's going to be on the team next year leads us. Okay, is that a 1st round pick? Is that a 2nd round pick? You see what I'm saying? Like, is it too early to be able to put those labels on these guys?
I think it's better to categorize it as day 1, 2, and 3. And, you know, I talked about Javon Baker, and I probably should have said instead of 4th round, you know, a day 2 guy. That's probably the better way to do it, or rather day 3 guy, excuse me. So it's It is early because I mean, and also it depends on how extensive you go, right? I like to go 10 to 15 deep at each position. You know what I mean? As far as like detailed, okay, this is what he does. This is an area for improvement. This is the type of scheme that he would fit in. Now, there's other guys beyond that you'll watch, a game or two and like, okay, I'm gonna keep it in mind if somebody asks. But it's still early because you haven't really gone through the whole vetting out process.
TD is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Coming up next, all of these coaching moves for the Titans, guys coming in, guys going out. What does TD make of it? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been around some great defensive coordinators, in my opinion. You know, I've been groomed by Greg Williams. I've been groomed by Todd Bowles, who are very good in this league, and they're very thorough. So, you know, I've been tutored by them. I know how to run a ship. I know, you know, the responsibility. So, if the opportunity presents itself, I'll be ready for it. But I'm here where my feet are, all right, and I'm just trying to be the best defensive back coach that I could be.
Well, he's not defensive back coach anymore. That's Denard Wilson, the Titans' new defensive coordinator. That was when he was with the Eagles. Now he's with the Ravens, but now he's with the Titans, reportedly hired today by Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon. So, TD, let's just kind of go over the coaching staff right here. Let's start with Denard Wilson. Your thoughts on that hire? TD's muted. And he's still muted.
Okay, here we
There
go.
you go.
Yeah, I know you want to go over the coaches, but before we do, you know, I think we have to look at you've been kind of tough, not kind of, very tough on Rand Carthon especially, but Brian Callahan also for not being here at the Senior Bowl. But, you know, I think they have bigger fish to fry. And these are the fish that I'm talking about. They need to be up there to conduct interviews. And, yeah, you could do interviews down here, but I will tell you you're pulled in a million different directions. It's much easier and more effective to focus while you're at the facility and do the interview that way. So it's not a big deal that Rand is not here. I mean, you got Chad Brinker here. You got, Anthony Robinson here, the full scouting staff, and they have coaches. It's okay that neither of those guys are here. So I think, you know, we need to stop making a big deal out of either of those
So
guys.
I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just personally don't like it.
I've heard you make a big, but well, okay, so you personally don't like it, but I'm telling you, have you been here before?
To the Senior Bowl?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so it's kind of tough to know, you know, how important it is or isn't to be here if you've never been here. You know, so for me, like having been, this is my 11th or 12th Senior Bowl, I could tell you it's not a big deal that they're not here, and it's not something to be concerned about. But, I mean, you want to talk about the coaches, like you look at Denard Wilson, and the thing I like about him is just he mentioned the guys that he's associated with. That means that he's going to have an attacking mindset. And you got to love when a team is able to blitz. Now, obviously, that's going to mean they're going to have to stock up on some corners, you know, and especially guys that can play man, because typically when you blitz, that's what you're seeing. So I think that's something to factor in. But above all else, this is a team, the Titans, that have struggled against the pass, and we know that. So you look over the past 2 years, there's been two different teams that had the top passing defense. Coincidentally, not really a coincidence, Denard Wilson was the coach of each of those units. And then you go back to Darius Slade. He made the comments that he felt that Wilson should have got the DC job when Jonathan Gannon left. So you have your players coming out and vouching for you in that strong of a manner. That definitely means that you're a good player. So I think, you know, a good coach. So I think Wilson is somebody that will come in and do a great job. Now, I'm curious, you know, who the veteran on the coaching staff is going to be, that assistant head coach type of role. I do want to see what they do there because, you know, I thought that this DC hire may have been someone, you know, like a Wink Martindale or James Betcher, like that type that has, extensive experience.
What do you make of the new wide receivers coach? Is it Tyke Tolbert?
Yeah, Tyke Tolbert. And I tell you what, he's a really good receiver coach, and he has a catalog of receivers that he's worked with. You know, you even go back to he coached at University of Florida. You remember Ben Troop. He was his position coach, you know, as a tight end, you know, and Troop was a guy, obviously, that was drafted, fourth round, I believe it was. But then you go to the league, and now you're looking at Anquan Bolden. You like him as a receiver, right?
Loved him.
Yeah, and so you look at that rookie year, he set the rookie record for receptions. So you have that. You got Lee Evans, who came in and was an instant deep threat out of Wisconsin, you know, had a solid career, at least start to the career there with the Bills. And then you take that over to he worked with Brian Callahan in Denver. And if you remember the Broncos, when, you know, they were really good, they had a receiver by the name of Demaryius Thomas, you know, rest in peace, who was an awesome awesome pass catcher. So he worked with him. And then you go to the Giants, his time there, you're looking at Sterling Shepard, who had a solid, first couple years as well. So I say all that to say this is a guy who has a proven track record of getting production out of talent, and he's going to bring tons of energy. So it's going to be pretty cool watching what he's able to do with a Traylon Burks and, with a Kyle Phillips and whoever else they bring in, whether it's free agency or the draft.
When it comes to the wide receivers coach and what Brian Callahan's envisioning doing, how do you expect kind of that communication and kind of delegation of, I don't want to say delegation, but maybe like the logistical aspect of, okay, Callahan's going to run the offense, and it's going to be his offense, and he's going to call the plays. But then the offensive coordinator is going to have his job, and then the quarterback's coach is going to have his job, and then the wide receivers coach is going to have his job. And what is it in a Brian Callahan offense that is expected, do you think, of the wide receiver coach that is important for fans to know?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I haven't been around Brian Callahan, so I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I know something that I don't. If you look at it, he spoke about the receivers, right? And the main thing that he talked about was them being selfless. So what does that mean? It's more than just blocking. It means, you're running a clear out route. You better run it hard to get open, to take the coverage to allow that guy running underneath you, to get open. So I would imagine there's going to be attention to detail. I would say it's going to be, that willingness to not be a selfish player, right? Be a team player and make sure that even if you're not getting the football, you're still trying to find a way to get involved. And that's obviously blocking or if there's a decoy route that you're running, you still better run it like you're going to get the ball because, in fact, you may end up getting the ball because there's a lot of times where a guy's running a route and he doesn't expect to get the ball, but the coverage will make the quarterback go there. And next thing you know, it's a big play opportunity.
Tiddy, I remember, with Charles London, you were very high on him and his relationship with Will Levis. It was reported that he's, free to go elsewhere and that he probably will go elsewhere. Were you surprised by that, given the relationship between him and Levis?
Yes, I was surprised by that because he did play a key role in development. Now, I'm not going to take anything away from Levis. He was the driving force of what he was able to do as far as stepping in and being ready to play. But that QB school that they had was a big part of it also. And so when you look at Brian Callahan, he is a noted guy who's worked with a lot of quarterbacks, and that's definitely the case. But, you also have to consider the OCs, the candidates that he's interviewed. Neither of those guys have extensive experience working with a quarterback. Now, as the OC, and you've seen practices, you know how it goes. He's not going to be able to spend time specifically with the quarterbacks, right? He has to be all over the place, the head coach, rather. You know what I mean? So, Brian Callahan, what he brings to the table is something that is noted, but how much of that will be able to be passed on because he has to oversee everything. And then you have, like I said, the OCs who don't have extensive experience, who's going to be the QB coach. And that's why I thought Charles London would be the perfect one because he's that guy that you could just say, okay, you worked with him before, continue. These are the things that I want to focus on, and boom, and you have somebody to execute it. Now, that's not to say there aren't any other QB coaches in the world. Obviously, Callahan has a plan, so I'm just curious how that's going to work out.
Now, Terrell Williams today gets hired by the Detroit Lions, even though he's the head coach of one of the teams in the Senior Bowl. Two questions on that. One, how surprised were you given that the Titans really, and I know Vrabel was the coach, but the Titans really liked Terrell Williams. The defensive line was always good under Terrell Williams. And then the second question is, so did he wear Titans gear yesterday, and was he wearing Lions gear today at the Senior Bowl practice?
Hey, listen, that's the question I was asking myself last night, man. I said, what is Coach T going to have on, man? But, he had the Titans gear on again today. And just another addition, Justin Hamilton, the assistant DB coach, he's here also. The guy they brought in out of Virginia Tech, he's here, and he was working with the DBs with Titans gear on. He actually had the Oilers swag on Tuesday, you know what I mean? So you definitely saw that. As far as being surprised, no. I talked to Coach T early in the process, and, he was weighing his options. Apparently, he did have the possibility of coming back. Obviously, he went and interviewed for the Bears DC job, but in the end, going to Detroit was the best decision in his mind, and that's why he went there. It's unfortunate because you mentioned, the development And just to bring up another guy, we talked about defensive guys, Tavondre Sweat. I'm not sure if you watched the D tackle out of Texas, but he is fun to watch. You're talking about a guy that's 366 pounds, running down running backs, the other side of the field. I mentioned him because I talked to him yesterday about Terrell Williams, and he was telling me how Terrell Williams was telling, hey, look, man, don't always use the bull rush, and helping him develop different things as far as able to use his hands better. And he actually said he watched a lot of Jeffrey Simmons, to learn that too. And here he got better in just 2 days of working with Terrell Williams. So that's just a testament to what Coach T brings to the table.
More with TD from the Senior Bowl. I've got one specific Senior Bowl question for TD, which we'll get to next. And then also, what is he hearing at the Senior Bowl? We'll do that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. There you go. TD is with us here on the TD Power Hour live from the Senior Bowl. So, TD, I want to know. I know there's gossiping there with all the amount of media people and coaches and executives and scouts. I know there's some serious gossip going on at the Senior Bowl about what may be coming up here as we approach the start of the offseason, and I want to know. But first, I have one very important Senior Bowl question for you that I have got to ask, and that is, what do you think of Michael Penix? I see all this talk about Penix. One day it's like he could go number 4 overall, and then the next day it's like he may not get drafted. And I know he's at the Senior Bowl, and I think the Senior Bowl might be big for him. What do you think of Penix?
Yeah, I don't know about him not getting drafted. That would be crazy. So whoever's saying that, they have to come off of that. He could be a first-round pick. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. There is some concern from, some of the things that I gathered down here. There is some concern, obviously, about the history of knee injuries, just the injury history itself. But you watch him, and just from a leadership perspective, like you see him going to the receivers, or even there was one during team period, a tight end, he didn't settle in that window like he was supposed to, and Penix went right over to him, let him know, and then he went back to him on the next play. And he's been solid, outstanding. Like, he's clearly the best vertical passer here, and he showed that. So I would be surprised if he gets out of the first round. But I mean, this is the same group of organizations that almost let Lamar Jackson get out of the first round. The Ravens had to trade back in and pick him with the Eagles at 32, after they picked the tight end. I forget his name now. Hayden Hurst. I almost said Hunter Henry, 2 H's. Hayden Hurst earlier in the teams.
So, TD, what are you hearing at the Senior Bowl? What is the gossip circuit kind of alluding to?
The big thing is the way COVID and NIL has impacted the group of prospects. And obviously, with COVID, you have guys getting, a 6th or in some case 7th year in college, and the prospects that are coming out are a bit older, so that is something that certain organizations and personnel groups factor into their evaluations. Others don't. But also, in addition to that, NIL is a big thing. Like, that's the topic and talking to a lot of people here. And it's like, what is happening is you have more juniors going back to school, right? And so that back end of the draft is something where it's like you can still get talent, a lot of people feel, but they're looking at it and they're saying, hey, you know what? This draft in particular is one where it's probably better to stockpile some picks and move up into day 1 and at the latest day 2 to get the guys that are going to help your roster.
How much does NIL, from what you're hearing, how much does that affect guys that would have gone pro because, hey, I might be a 5th-round pick, but a 5th-round pick in the NFL is making $700,000, but I can play another year here at Tech, and I can get $1.1 million to be a receiver.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, right? Some of these guys who would get drafted on day 3, they normally get drafted on day 3. They're staying, right? To make more money. And then also even top prospects. Like, you look at Quincy Riley, right? Out of your school, right? He's a corner that was probably a day 2 guy, right? He could go back. He wants to be a first-round pick. And he could do that and afford to do it because, hey, it's NIL. I'm going to make a couple dollars still, so I don't have to, be on this ramen noodles and hot dog diet that I'm on. I'm just kidding, but you know what I mean. Like, you could go ahead and live okay going back to school another year.
So when I was watching the Senior Bowl today, TD, they focused in during the one-on-ones with the receivers and the DBs, and they focused in on this one DB from Toledo. And I didn't have the sound on, so I don't know what they were talking about when it comes to the DB from Toledo. Then you texted me about the DB from Toledo. Who is this superstar from Toledo?
Yeah, so he's the one that I said called out Roman Wilson. And they called him out for a reason because he's the best DB. He's the best corner here, and there's no conversation. And you watch him, just the way he gets in and out of like his back pedal on transitions to break on the ball. I love corners that break up slants. I watched him just kind of stay over top of the receiver, at the top of the route when he makes the move and breaks inside, and then just reach right inside because he breaks off of it and reach right inside and knock it down. And he did the same thing on some curls and hooks, like those type of quick routes, working their way back to the quarterback. And then on top of that, he could run with pretty much any of these receivers. Brandon Rice, Jerry Rice's son, is here, and he's a pretty big receiver, nice size. He ran a deep route, and Keon Mitchell turned and ran with him and went up and picked it off, and outraced Brandon Rice to what would have been a touchdown. So it's just the efficiency, never panicking, always staying in phase, able to make plays on the ball. That is why there's a lot of buzz on him. I know the Titans like him. Number 7 overall is a little rich for him, but like I said, he's going to be a top 20 pick.
I do wonder, when we talk about just the gossip and what people are saying, and Trevor was on earlier this week, and he was talking about how the tackles in the draft, you may be able to get some really good tackles even later in the first round. And knowing that the Titans don't have a third-round pick, knowing that a Roma Dunze or a Malik Neighbors could be available with that pick, or a quarterback could be available if Jaden Daniels or Drake May doesn't go in the first 3 picks, a quarterback could be available there. I do wonder if the Titans are looking at this and thinking, hey, we could trade out, and then we could end up with, as I call it, what Floyd told me before the 2015 draft, when he said instead of taking a Joey Bosa, you can trade that first pick and end up with Samari Rolle, Derek Mason, and Michael Roos, all with that one pick. I do wonder if that draft may afford the Titans an ability to do something like that by trading down a little bit, still getting a good player, but then being able to pop a couple of maybe day 2 picks as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's something to consider. But I think you look at the way the Titans are set up, if they decide to go the receiver route in the first round, I mean, I think Jordan Morgan is going to be there out of Arizona. And he's a guy, I talked to him now. Jarrett, he has the short arms. So there is a conversation of moving him to inside. But he said he's not trying to do that. And he pointed to, and all the short arm guys, that's what they do. Because when I asked Skoronski about it, he did the same thing. Point to Rashawn Slater. So, we'll see how that works out. But I think he could be a solid tackle. I mean, yeah, the guy has short arms, but he's played with short arms all his life. So you have that. But then conversely, going back to the guy out of Houston, I mentioned Patrick Paul, 36-inch arms. I mean, so you have the length there. He plays left tackle. His feet, I actually posted a video yesterday where he got beat and his feet kind of got crossed up, but he was able to jump and reset himself and recover and not give up what would have been the sack in one-on-one. So for me, Patrick Paul at the top of the second, I think is something to look at. But again, I still have to look at more of these guys to firmly say that. I mean, you look at Christian Jones, he's another one. There's an assortment of guys that, that are here that they could look at. And if they trade back, like you had mentioned, you're still in the first round. Tyler Guyton, again, a lot of upside with him. He's a beautiful athlete. And when you talk about flipping him to the left side, you can do that, or you can leave him at right tackle. I mean, right tackle is an important position also. So that is an option, and maybe flip Radens to the left side, and Radens has always been better on the left side, more comfortable rather. So you could do that as well.
TD is with us. Let's get your phones for TD, as we always do at the end of the hour. 615-737-1025. Hit those in, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman & Company. And again, TD is brought to you, the TD Power Hour is brought to you by the all-new, brand-new ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Stillman and Company TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, do you have a thought or do you want to go right to the phones?
Yeah, no, just a quick thought. I got to take a picture with T.O. today, and in that picture, you'll see me rocking the Jays. I had different Jays on for each week down here, and for anybody wanting to add to their collection, check my guys out at Soho Gallery. They're at 767 Main Street in Hendersonville, and mention the code TD10, and you get $10 off of $100. And even if you're new to the sneaker game, they have something for you. And if you're like me, a sneakerhead, they got something there too, and they'll guide you in the right direction.
All right, let's go to Mike in Gallatin. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mike, you're on with TD.
Thanks, guys. So I know you guys did just end the segment with a talk about a corner, but I don't know if the Titans and their lack of secondary pieces is being talked about enough as things that need to be addressed. I know we have so many areas that have big gaping holes in there, but like outside of Caleb Farley, which I don't even know what his status is, if you can wrap that into your answer too, that'd be huge. But what's our current state of our secondary, and what's the best route of trying to I don't know, make it better? Because I really kind of feel like J-Rob kind of screwed this secondary with the flops of the draft picks that we had these last few years, and we have to get that fixed bad, or we're going to be. I don't know. I don't know how to.
We got you, Mike. Secondary, TD. What do you think about fixing the secondary?
Yeah, no, that's a good question by Mike, and he asked about Farley, and for Farley, it's twofold. He still doesn't. Well, at least at the last time I talked to him, at Locker Cleanout, he still didn't feel like all the way back, but he still felt like he was getting there. It's going to be a mental part too, so I wouldn't bank on him as great of a kid as he is and as talented as he is. I'm not sure about that one. Jared, I text you about the corners, and there's a lot of them here. I mean, we talked about Keon Mitchell. I mean, you have a bunch of corners. The
kid from Oregon today, I really like.
There you go. 6'3". He's one of those corners that's long, and he breaks. Now, he had a good day on Tuesday too. I lost track of him because he changed helmets. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it was tough. But yeah, 6'3" with movement skills. I like him a lot. Cam Hart out of Notre Dame is another one that is really good and has done a good job here. One of the guys I wanted to see do well was Johnny Dixon, and he struggled a bit, and then he didn't practice today. But I would say this: you talk about small school guys. Virginia State has a corner named Willie Drew, and he was really sticky in coverage. So those are a few. I mean, we could talk a lot about them, but long story short, between free agency as well as the draft, they are going to need to bring some guys in. I would say, 3 corners. And honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to them looking at a 1-year deal with Christian Fulton. You know what I mean? Because I think that Denard Wilson effect can really help a guy like Christian Fulton who is really good at man skills and those type of things. And I'll give you an example of how Denard Wilson can help a corner. And you look at the Baltimore Ravens this past year and Ronald Darby and how productive he was.
Mm-hmm. Actually somebody texted in and asked TD about, the physical style of defense that the Eagles played last year in the secondary and that the Ravens play this year. Do you expect the Titans, who have been physical at times, to return to that physical, hands-on style of defense?
Yeah, I think they will. And, I mean, they played those guys. I mean, you look at Sean Murphy-Bunting, you look at Fulton, they're very hands-on type of corners, and if you want a guy in the draft that's like that, and a feisty one, I mentioned Jarvis Brownlee Jr. out of Louisville, and then also you got Johnny Dixon. He's a very hands-on feisty corner too. So I would say yes, they're going to need to return to that, because if you're blitzing, you need to get that coverage intact, and you have to cause that chatter at the line of scrimmage to slow things down and allow that blitz to get home. So I would imagine they're going to get a little more physical in the secondary.
Texture says, TD, how does Jackson Powers Johnson look? And I want to take it a step further, which is, what do we think about the center position with the Titans? Because we haven't talked about that at all.
Yeah, JPJ is what they call him. And he worked a bit at guard, too, as well as center. He's the best center down here. There's no argument. But I tell you what, he has the luxury of not having to go against T'Vondre Sweat. Mm-hmm. And that bull rush that Sweat had, it's not fair to any of the guys on the American team. Like, I'm sure they're happy that practice is over and they don't have to go against him. So you look at JPJ, just the way he's able to just absorb the bull rush and some of the different quick moves. Like he and Michael Hall was a matchup to watch. Hall got him with a spin move one time, and then he tried it another time, and JPJ was able to recover and keep him from getting past him. So he's someone you talk about first-round picks that are here. He's a guy that I think, he could be a late first-round pick.
By the way, Will Stein, I was texting with him, the offensive coordinator at Oregon this week. He said he taught Jackson Powers Johnson everything he knows. If that's the case, go ahead, take him off the Titans board. I'm kidding. One texter says, TD, how do you look at the stacking of the free agent class and how that may affect decisions that the Titans make in the draft?
Yeah. And real quick, you asked about that center position, so let me just touch on that. I think that is something that they're going to want to look at. I like Aaron Brewer a lot, and he's a tough guy, but I think you might want to move on because you need somebody that could, keep that interior pass rush from coming, against those guys, those D tackles. So that is the case. But as far as like free agency stacking against the draft, I think it would factor a bit, but to be honest with you, Mike Evans may be available. T. Higgins, we already saw that he won't. So I don't know that signing any of these receivers, if I was in charge, would keep me from going receiver high in the draft. If the opportunity presents itself.
You
and then
interpreted
you look at
those
the tackle,
Bengal comments that T. Higgins will be back with the Bengals?
They said they want to have him back.
The way I read it like Jamar Chase, he's in our plans. He's an elite player. We want the Higgins one was the we'll see at the end where I was like, oh, that might mean that they.
You know what they're probably going to do? I'm going to tell you what they're going to do. Jamar Chase will likely get a deal. From what I understand, he may be looking to get a deal this year, and they'll tag T. Higgins. I think that's the case. But they said they wanted him to be back. So I don't think T. Higgins is going to come available. If he does come available, I mean, obviously that's somebody I would consider because you got the familiarity there, and it's very clear that Brian Callahan thinks highly of him. Now you sign a T. Higgins, then okay, that will alter the draft a bit, because now you don't have to. Well, you still could, but it's the position is not as much of a position of need as it is offensive line. But again, even if that is the case, you don't reach for any particular need in the first round, especially. So it's just going to depend on what they do. I mean, you look at Robert Hunt, the guard out of Miami. He's someone I would look at signing, right? Especially if they sign the run game coordinator Eric Stillman from Miami. So you have that, but. You look at the left tackle position, right tackle. I mean, there aren't really any free agents that I would say, hey, all right, you have him. Don't worry about Alt Fashanu or any of those guys.
TD, what do you think of Brock Bowers if he falls to the Titans at 7?
Very, very, very intriguing. I just don't know. It's just going to depend on how that stacks up. Like what receivers are there, what offensive linemen are there. That's the key. But he's going to be very high on pretty much anybody's board. So you just have to look at it and see how it matches up.
All right, TD, great stuff from the Senior Bowl. I know you'll have even more throughout the week, of course, because you always hit the morning show tomorrow anyways. But tell us about the all-new, brand-new ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
Yeah, for sure. It is now live in Tennessee. So it's the only place that you can find daily exclusives and offers with your favorite ESPN personalities and shows. And if you go ahead and download the app, sign up today. New users get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. And you can find all your favorite markets bets like in-game wagering, cross-sport parlays. You want to mix basketball and something else. You could do that. Teasers, too. I know a lot of people like to do those. And all the props you can handle. So make sure you check out ESPN Bet. You download that app today. What a play. And, of course, you must be 21 or older and in Tennessee.
TD, great stuff. As always, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, appreciate it.
Yep, TD live from the Senior Bowl here at the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Coming up next, boy, I tell you, that was a tough one for the Predators last night, especially against David Rittich. We'll get to that coming up. Stillman and Company, and what it really means as far as where they're headed. Because Barry said, he's thinking about, buying, selling 8 to 10 games. He'll figure it out. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Predators losers last night to the LA Kings, and it just felt like the Predators were going to try to make a comeback there at the end. They had the disallowed goal, which I didn't totally agree with, but it is what it is. And they lost again. And again, it was ultimately that they just don't have enough offense. And so Barry Trotz came on our show yesterday, and he said that the next 8 to 10 games would determine whether or not the Predators are going to be buyers or sellers ahead of the NHL's trade deadline. And yesterday, Andrew Burnett talked about the fact that the Predators clearly are limping into their break, but they'll go to the All-Star break, then they'll have the week off, then they'll come back for the last 30 games of the season, and it's like those 30 games will tell us what this team's going to be or not be, and they go from there. I don't want to start talking about elections because, well, quite frankly, we have months and months and months and months of election talk that's upcoming for everybody, so I don't want to get started on all of that. But let me just say this. I think we can call it. I think the Predators should be sellers at the trade deadline. And I don't just think it's about last night, but I think last night's game was kind of the icing on the cake. And it's really about the last week of games, right? And it's not that they lost the 3 in a row that they've lost, though they did pick up a point against Ottawa the other night. It's the fact that, well, quite frankly, they just don't have any offense. That's the problem. Now, I expect the offense will pick up a little bit, because their first line is capable of carrying them, and they may bring some guys up from Milwaukee that have a little bit more talent, or guys that are slumping might turn it around a little bit after this break. But like I said, big picture, the Predators are what they are, which is a mid-level NHL team that is capable of making the playoffs and probably nothing more. And so this week they played Edmonton on Saturday. Edmonton, a great team that is definitely a cup contender, may win the cup. They may have the most offensive firepower in the league. And the Predators played well. They just couldn't score enough to keep up with the firepower of Edmonton. Then they get off to a 3-0 lead in the Ottawa game, but as Barry said yesterday, they didn't even play very well in that game. And they couldn't hold it, and they couldn't score for the rest of the game against Ottawa, who's not even that good. And then last night against David Rittich, they just couldn't score when it mattered most. They could not take command of the game because they just don't have somebody who can just get the puck and put it in the net. And that's what they're trying to develop. That's what Joakim Kimmel is supposed to be. That is what the Matthew Wood kid that's in Connecticut right now, that's what he's supposed to be. That's what Barry is desperate and they are trying to get. But they don't have it now. And so, as I said yesterday, it doesn't matter if the Predators buy or sell. The Predators will be competing for a playoff spot regardless. Because if they sell, they'll open up spots where they'll bring guys up from Milwaukee. Now, the question is, which kind of guys would they bring up? Would they bring up the guys that have the talent that we think are going to be NHL players for a while, and hopefully one of those guys pops into a top 6 forward like a Campbell or a Shvetsov or a LaRue or one of those guys? Or will they bring up Mark Jankowski? That I couldn't tell you. But again, no matter what they end up doing, they'll still probably be chasing a wild card spot. So if the goal this year was, hey, let's see how well they can do, and then if they can't really compete with the big boys, let's turn around and sell, well, wouldn't that be the right thing to do right now? Wouldn't that make the most sense? So I think it's time for the Predators to sell. I think the Predators are going to sell. And then Barry kept talking about the fact that they've got a bunch of UFAs. Now, they did re-sign Cole Smith, which a lot of you weren't very excited about. I think it's fine. But they do have guys that when Alex Carrier's healthy, maybe there will be a team out there that wants Alexander Carrier. Now, Tyson Berry's a UFA, but nobody's wanted him. So I don't know what you get there. And then there's a guy like Gus Nyquist, right? Kind of like Nino Niederreiter. You sign Nino Niederreiter to a 2-year deal. Midway through the year, you realized you weren't a cup contender. You shipped off Nino Niederreiter, and you got a second-round pick in return. Gus Nyquist started off having a great year this year. Is it worth the fact that in order to make the playoffs, you might need Gus Nyquist? You have a much better chance of making it with Gus Nyquist. But is it worth it when you could trade him if his value is at its highest? And then, of course, there's the goalie. And Barry did say yesterday on the program that he would listen when it comes to the goalie. I just don't know what the point of keeping Saros around would be. I'm trying to think in my head for next year. I would expect that the best young players at Milwaukee, for the most part, will be Nashville Predators next year. That means I think Joakim Kimmel will be on the first line next year with Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly. And they expect Joakim Kimmel to be a high-end talent. And just like when Philip Forsberg showed up after they traded for him the next year, that first year under Laviolette, he really did pop. So if they get that, and the defense improves, and it's the second year under the system, and they bring up some more, they draft some more, they got more prospects, whatever, could they conceivably be a team next year that could compete for the Stanley Cup? Or I shouldn't say that. Conceivably, probably not, but like, is it more likely than not? No, it's not. Well, you have Saros signed for this year and next year. And you did not draft Yaroslav Askarov to play all the games in Milwaukee. You used that high pick in 2020 on Yaroslav Askarov to be the starting goalie of the Nashville Predators, or else you wouldn't have picked him. Now, this would be a different conversation had Barry pulled off one of those trades before the draft where he used Askarov as a potential trade chip to try to move up to the 4th or 3rd pick in the draft. But now, Askarov is crushing it at Milwaukee. He is probably not ready for the NHL, but he probably will be ready very soon, and that is the future. And so I know that, again, Barry has said this for about the last month when it comes to what they may or may not do ahead of the trade deadline. And again, they are outside of the playoffs right now. They've got 54 points. St. Louis has 2 games in hand and also has 54 points and is in. So the Predators could still make the playoffs. I mean, again, they got hot last year after they tore everything up. But it just doesn't seem likely to me that over the next 2 years, you see Saros, even when he's playing at his best, which right now I don't think he's playing at, but even when he's playing at his best, probably doesn't make you a contender in the Western Conference. Not against the Vegases of the world, not against Edmonton, Colorado, who's still got those bad boys up front, Dallas, who seems to never go away. You're probably not going to have that team, which means that selling absolutely should be on the table. When Barry begged the fans at the beginning of the year, and really the beginning of this entire process, and said, guys, be patient. That's what he's talking about. He is talking to you all and saying, guys, please be patient. These upcoming seasons, it might be tough. We hope it's not, but it might be. And it just looks like, again, after this week, that the likelihood of the Predators being able to score enough to make the playoffs, maybe. Score enough to win in the playoffs, not very likely. So I do not expect the Predators to be buyers at the deadline. I think I might go crazy if they did something, like a second-round pick for Jeremy Lauzon. But I do expect them to be sellers. And I know Barry said the next 8 to 10 games because he has the luxury of doing that. But I think we all know after last night and after the week that they've had, right? And it's not a bad thing. I mean, I was hopeful that this team could make the playoffs and give me one competitive round, which is all I want. That's all I'm asking for. But I can live with it. We came into the season knowing that they weren't cup contenders. We got it. But I think after last night, they're playing hard. They are. And the power play's got to improve, and they can be better than they are right now. but they can't be much better than they are right now. And so I think it's official, time to call it. I think it's time to start talking about selling. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, plus what Barry said yesterday about the package he wants in return for UC Saros. Now, is that actually out there? We'll get to that coming up next. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Saw my friends at Hiller last night, by the way, at the game. They are the best. It is Valentine's season, and love is in the air. Find your perfect match this month with Hiller. Get a free UV light when you purchase select new HVAC systems and get a free whole home surge protection when you buy a new whole home generator. Get 50% off a descaler when you buy a new tankless water heater, and you'll never be more in love with your home. And I know that because I use Hiller at my home. They do a fabulous job. That's right. They are the best. Find your perfect match at happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face truck today. So on the goalie front, there's not really a recent big-time top-of-the-league goalie that's been traded that would maybe set a precedent for this is what it would take to get a UC Saros, which makes me think that if somebody were to call you and say, hey, we need goaltending for our cup run, you would then almost have to name the price of, hey, this is what it would take. Have you even thought about that yet?
Yeah, no, I have to. I don't want to be take a call and go, okay, I'll get back to you. It might be one of those where, if this player's name comes up, then we're talking. If this player doesn't come up, then we're not even in the ballpark. So I don't want to waste anybody's time. If they do call, I want to be prepared. So we have talked with our pro scouts. We've also talked to our management group to have the right names that would be game changers, basically, if that call ever came.
There you go. That was Barry saying, hey, I want the right package. And it sounded to me like Barry wants a high-end forward that is NHL ready in exchange for UC Saros. And Ian, I'm going to put this on you. Do teams trade high-end forwards for goalies?
Not recently as much, no.
I mean, I feel like that's a pretty, no.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, hey, if we're going to trade the goalie, we want this great package. It's like, I don't know if that package exists. And then I asked him yesterday about the draft choices, and he said, if I'm trading for a draft choice, I look at that as somebody that's not even going to help this team for 4 to 5 years. It's like, well, UC Saros, that's you got to get a lot in return for UC Saros. So that's what makes this incredibly complicated is I think they probably should trade the goalie or at least should, call around and see what they're willing to offer and then see if there's a bidding war out there or a general manager who thinks, I better just freaking go all in to get the goalie or else I'm going to get fired. But there has to be a dance partner who's willing to pay the price that it seems and feels like the Predators would be looking for. 615-737-1025. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Alan Smyrna says, is Stillman backing off his guarantee of the Predators making the playoffs? Did I guarantee the Predators will make the playoffs?
No, but you were close.
I got close one time, but I didn't do it. So since I didn't do it, Al, you can't hold me to that guarantee. But boy, I was close. Ooh, I was close. It seems like ever since I got off the bandwagon, they got good, and then I got back on the bandwagon, and they got bad.
Yeah, we let's see. As far as Adam Vingan and I have been trying to tabulate Jared's records of on the bandwagon, and off the bandwagon. What we have, the Preds are 14-4 when Jared is off the bandwagon, and 12-20-1 when Jared is on the bandwagon.
What is it again when I'm on the bandwagon?
12-20-1.
Oof.
And 14-4 when you're off. So, yeah, pretty close here.
That's bad. That's bad. Caleb says, what kind of return will the Predators get for Saros? Again, this is uncharted territory. The thing that's crazy is that, and I've experienced some uncharted territory in my life, and everybody wants to know the answer to everything straight up. Everybody wants to know the answer at the end. Like, just tell me, is my team going to win or lose? I don't know. Just tell me, am I going to be able to get 2 first-round picks in exchange for UC Saros? I don't know. Sometimes that might be the joy in life. Sometimes it might be the pain in life, is trying to figure out, what is the answer to the question that nobody knows. There's no precedent when it comes to a goalie being traded recently. Adam and I were talking about this earlier this week, and he was talking about Connor Hellebuck. And he's like, if Connor Hellebuck had been traded this offseason from Winnipeg, then there would have been an established market for what Saros would cost. Now there's not, which means Barry Trotz sits there and says, okay, here's my price. And it sounded yesterday like his price is a high-end NHL-ready forward. And I don't think teams trade those for goalies. It's kind of like trading a quarterback for a running back. They just don't do that. James says good goalies are harder to come by than good forwards. That's not true. And even if it is true, even if it's just true that straight up a good goalie is harder to find than a good forward, the reality is the teams that are winning the cup aren't doing it because of what they have in net. Vegas was winging it last year. They won the cup. Colorado was winging it the year before. They won the cup. I mean, so you want to sit there and say, oh, well, a great goalie is really, really hard to find. The teams that are winning the cup, like Jordan Bennington comes out of nowhere for half the season. They win the cup. He's the Conn Smythe. Well, no. O'Reilly was the Conn Smythe, but he was the one that was on fire that they ended up winning the cup. And he's back to an average goalie. Like, remember Matt Murray? Remember that whole drama when the Predators were in the cup final against Pittsburgh? And Matt Murray, who had won the cup the year before, taking over for an injured Marc-Andre Fleury, was the Penguins goalie. And there was that whole, Murray-Fleury drama. Guess what? Matt Murray stinks too. I mean, he's been all around the league. So, yeah, okay, I guess a good goalie's harder to come by than a good forward, but a good goalie is not more valuable than Connor Bedard, which is why the top of these drafts right now are the big boy forwards. If there's a big boy forward out there, he's going number one. Why? Because it's incredibly hard to get Nathan McKinnon. And in fact, I would say this, other than the NBA, and the NBA is weird because outside of LeBron, very rarely is the great, great, great player 1-1, right? Like Giannis Antetokounmpo was not 1-1. I actually believe, did Giannis go in 2013? And I think that was the Anthony Bennett draft. So having 1-1 does not necessarily, it's not the end-all, be-all in basketball like it's led to believe. Zion Williamson 1-1. Oh, my God, look at the celebration in New Orleans. And,
yeah, he was 15th overall in the 2013 draft.
15th. But in the NBA, if you got the one guy, you're good. That's it. Duncan, you're good. LeBron, you're good. Kobe, you're good. Hockey is second. And hockey is probably the sport where tanking and getting that player happen to actually work out the best. Like, that's the one that happens to work out the best. One texter says, is Jared officially off the bandwagon? Yes, I am. I am officially off the bandwagon. I am ready to sell. And so that means I'm off the bandwagon. So if I'm off the bandwagon, what are the Predators' odds now, Ian? What are they likely to go the rest of the way now that I'm officially off the bandwagon? Let me get Jared is off the bandwagon.
Well, they are 10 games above 500 with you off the bandwagon, 14-4.
And they have 30 games left. Right.
So if they go, what's that? Say if they go 6 with 6 losses or 8 losses the rest of the way out of the 22-8. Would you take that?
So they have 54 points, and then we're adding another 44 points to that, which put them at 98 points. That does put them in the playoffs, right?
Probably so, yeah.
Probably,
I heard them. Yeah, 90, I think high 90s would probably get you in.
Okay. So they have to play for the entire second half of the season the exact way that they played for the, 3 weeks I was off the bandwagon?
Yeah, something like that.
Good luck to them.
18 games, yeah.
Texture says, are you discussing the rumored trade deal that was publicized earlier today regarding Saros? 2 first-rounders and a high-end prospect. Is that what Elliott said on the midday show today?
I did not hear that.
So I actually texted Vingan the other day, and I said, I guess I'd want 2 first-rounders, an unprotected first next year, and a high-end forward prospect. And Vingan laughed at my face. So I don't think that would be enough for Saros. As much as that's what I would want for Saros. Another Travis says, stay off the bandwagon. Texture says, don't do NBA and NHL comparisons. I'm just saying. In hockey, though you want to get Sidney Crosby, you got to stink. But at least you know when you stink that year. Now, you don't know if you're going to get him because there's a lottery, just like basketball. But you know, for the most part, when that dude's out there. Like Connor Bedard was out there and everybody knew. So you know the years to stink. It's not like the Miami Dolphins tried to stink that 1 year for Tua, ended up getting Tua, but Joe Burrow was better. That's not usually what happens when it comes with the NHL draft. Texture says 3 points out of a wild card and we're off the bandwagon. The Predators aren't 3 points out of a wild card spot. The Predators are tied for a wild card spot. And yes, Dustin, I'm off the bandwagon. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. So the University of Tennessee, they are mad at the NCAA. And it's somebody else's shot today to come out with a big old statement. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
As a source put it to me who has some familiarity with this case, prepare for a firefight of epic proportion between the NCAA and the university and the Spire Group, which is the collective, it runs the collective, the Vol Club, volunteer club that has run the NIL efforts for Tennessee. So this has been described to me as quote-unquote major, quote-unquote big. So the scope of the violations could be considerable. The level of violations that could be alleged is expected to be level 1, level 2, which is the most significant kind and yield the biggest penalties. And in response, Tennessee is ready to fight fire with fire.
Okay, that was Bat 40 on the Feinbaum Show earlier this week. Again, it came out that Tennessee is in some trouble. Supposedly, Pat 40 reported it. NIL type stuff. Nothing to do with Jeremy Pruitt and all of his drama. And as Tennessee fans are wont to do, Tennessee fans have decided to play the role of a victim. Now, as I said yesterday, and I stand by this, when it comes to Tennessee and it comes to this idea of what punishment they may be facing, I have no opinion because I don't even know what they did. In fact, I don't even know what they're alleged of doing. And the reason that we don't know that is because the NCAA has not come out and said, hey, here's what you've done, which is usually what they do. And then they let you respond to it. So normally I'd like to see what's being alleged before it's done, before I have an opinion on it. But not Tennessee fans. Tennessee fans are not interested at all as to what happened or didn't happen. Or they already know what it is the NCAA is mad at, even though the NCAA hasn't told them what they're mad at. They already know what the NCAA is mad at, and they already know that it's so easily debunkable that it's just a waste of time. And we're going to sue them, and we're going to win. Now, you might win, but I don't know that. I don't know that you're going to win. But Danny White, the athletic director at Tennessee, came out with a statement today. Quote, and this is a statement. I mean, again, this grandstanding is just wild to me. But he says, quote, the NCAA, bold and italics, generally does not comment on infraction cases. End bold and italics. Because there is a rule against it. However, that has not stopped them in the past from leaking information to the media as they did this week about us. Their actions make this ill-conceived investigation public. Ill-conceived investigation. We don't even know what it's about. But he says it's ill-conceived. Their actions make this ill-conceived investigation public and forced us to defend ourselves. It is clear that the NCAA staff does not understand what is happening at the campus level all over the country in the NIL space. After reviewing thousands of Tennessee coach and personal phone records, NCAA investigators didn't find a single NIL violation, so they moved the goalpost to fit a predetermined outcome. They are stating that the nebulous, contradictory to NIL guidelines written by the NCAA, not the membership, doesn't matter, and applying the old booster bylaws to collectives. If that's the case, then 100% of the major programs in college athletics have significant violations. This is obviously silly and not productive, as is blaming the membership whenever they are challenged. We need to be spending our time and energy on solutions to better organize college athletics in the NIL era, something that the NCAA leadership failed to do back in 2021. Student athletes, prospective student athletes, coaches, and administrators across the country deserve better, and I, Danny White says, refuse to allow the NCAA to irrationally use Tennessee as an example for their own agendas. And I can just hear the Tennessee fans now. Yeah! But what does that really do? What was the point of Danny White's statement? What does Danny White's statement do to affect this? I understand Don DePlowman, the chancellor, came out the other day when this stuff all broke and was basically like, hey, if you're going to come for the king, you best not miss, and we will sue you. And I think Tennessee probably needed one statement like that. Since then, it has been one grandstanding measure after another. The governor has a comment on this. Oh, boy, I tell you, the governor doesn't have more important things to do. Here's the governor's take on it. Okay? And then after the governor, we've got the attorney general. We're going to sue him. Well, Tennessee already threatened to sue him anyways. So you suing like as on behalf of the state, I don't know what that does. Then again, maybe a legal expert will say it does matter. I don't know. And now the athletic director came out. And I saw Joe had a tweet, and he was like, well, maybe tomorrow will be Josh Heupel's statement. This is wrestling in terms of just, like, do we need all the grandstanding and all the rah, rah, rah support? But there's something about Tennessee fans that, again, the problem with Tennessee fans is that Tennessee fans, for the most part, think that the Vols should be treated a certain way, when in reality, success would argue that the Vols should be treated like everybody else. Like, I'm a Louisville fan, and I don't ever expect us to get positive coverage or better coverage or anything like we're a regular run-of-the-mill school. We had a good football season this year. We ended up in the ACC championship game. We should have been in the Orange Bowl. We weren't, but we should have been. But I didn't expect oh, man, the disrespect of Louisville. Tennessee fans are different. Tennessee fans feel like any slight at Tennessee, and saying Tennessee is not the greatest ever is a slight. They feel personally attacked. And so what they're doing now, what this Danny White statement is doing, is just to rev up the base. But it doesn't actually mean anything because Tennessee fans will think Tennessee's innocent no matter what. That's the thing about investigations and things like that in today's era is we could have the pictures of Josh Heupel, and I don't think this exists. And so I'm not saying it does. I'm just using this as an example. But we could have the pictures of Josh Heupel with a loaded briefcase full of cash going up to Nico Iamaleava and basically saying, here's $8 million to play quarterback at Tennessee. And we could see the pictures. We could see the video. And Tennessee fans would say, well, everybody's doing it. That's not Josh Heupel. That doesn't mean that he actually gave him the money. That's just him showing him the money. We don't see Nico taking the money himself and depositing it into his bank account or using it to go buy stuff. So we don't even know what happened to that money. That's what Tennessee fans are all about. And that's what it feels like is starting to happen here. Tennessee fans have decided that Tennessee is innocent. And I do not understand how you can get to that when we don't even know what it is that they did or did not allege to do. And it drives me crazy. Texter says, everyone cheats. Tennessee just needs to go to class to learn how to cheat better because nobody gets caught as much as Tennessee. Again, I'm not looking for preferential treatment here, but I did go to Louisville. And again, at Louisville, when it comes to the cheating and everything else, we haven't been cheating for a long time. And I think we're getting our comeuppance in terms of basketball because we stink. I mean, we really, really stink at basketball. But I think we're getting our comeuppance from all the cheating, but we were cheating a lot. It was, so don't say that Tennessee always cheats and everything else. I wouldn't go that far. Texter says, the extremist Tennessee fans I know say it's not a coincidence that Alabama loses Saban and now Tennessee's under investigation. What? You're telling me that, again, he said the extremist. So you mean to tell me that what's happening is some Tennessee fans think that Nick Saban leaves Alabama. Tennessee fans think, this is our chance. The NCAA sees Nick Saban leave Alabama, thinks, oh my God, this is Tennessee's chance, and then decides to throw a sham investigation about something that happened 3 or 4 years ago? I'm supposed to believe that. Mike says, you've had some bad takes over the years. This may be the worst. Ian, do you think it's the worst?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, do you think it's even a bad take?
No, not really.
Do you think it's inaccurate?
Inaccurate?
If Tennessee fans saw Josh Heupel with a briefcase full of cash, giving it to Nico Iamaleava,
it doesn't matter. He could do anything. It wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter. Texter says, Jared, this is a national issue. All top 50 schools should be on alert. You might not know, but UT probably does. I mean, all I heard, and again, I am not Caroline when it comes to the college stuff, but all I heard was that Florida is getting an investigation, Florida State's getting an investigation, Tennessee's getting an investigation. That's all I know. Texture says, worst college basketball team this year, Louisville or Vanderbilt? Louisville, but Vanderbilt is, that's not that, that's bad. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. The coaching carousel in the NFL is over. And none of these are my teams except for the Titans, and I like the hire the Titans made. I was in favor of firing Vrabel. I like the hire that they made. I don't have a problem with any of that. But there are a couple of names on the outside looking in. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
But now that we have these two decided and there's no other head coaching gigs open, it's like Vrabel, Belichick, Ben Johnson, Slowick. We're all just assuming they're going to wait until next year. This is just a next year type thing, or what do you think happens with Vrabel and Bill?
Well, they're going to have to sit down and decide exactly how they want to approach the season. And everybody handles it differently. There are various ways to go about it. Both men are under contract, so it's not like there's any rush. Both men are well known and have great reputations. People know that they're out there. I think if it were me, I think you want to stay involved in the game to some extent. You want to go around in training camps. You want to visit with some organizations that you know and respect, with people that will let you kind of watch and observe for 3, 4, 5 days at a time, maybe a week. Then maybe you want to work with one of those teams just as a consultant in an advisory role, breaking down film, making suggestions, whatever it may be. Because when the next cycle rolls around, and even before then, frankly, the names that are going to be on the tip of everybody's lips will be Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll.
There you go. That was Shefty on Pat McAfee. And so it is official with Dan Quinn being hired by the Commanders that Mike Vrabel is not getting a job for 2024. Mike Vrabel's not coaching in 2024. Bill Belichick's not coaching in 2024. Pete Carroll is not coaching in 2024. Now, let's leave Pete out of this. I feel terrible because Pete Carroll is such a great guy, and I think he's a great coach, and I think he's still got juice. You know, I mean, they won a lot of games with Geno Smith as quarterback. So I think it's kind of unfair to Pete, but it is what it is. Let's look at Bill and at Vrabel. Are we shocked that these guys didn't get jobs? And I know Titan fans are taking great solace in the fact that Mike Vrabel doesn't have a job, especially after, as I have brought up many times, all the finger wagging about Mike Vrabel will get a job tomorrow. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, because a lot of you guys had to hear that. And I believed it. I didn't care because I'm like, fine, let him put Jason Hodling at offensive line coach for his next team. I don't care. But I'm still shocked Vrabel doesn't have a job. I mean, when these jobs started coming open and Vrabel got fired, it was like, you know, the Chargers might be a good fit for Vrabel. Well, they're going to go with Harbaugh. Okay, that makes sense. Harbaugh's a good coach, and he's going to win the national championship, and the Chargers have the best job because they have the best quarterback. That's fine. Okay, well, what about some of these other jobs? Atlanta, well, they're going to go with Bill. Okay, that would make sense, but they didn't go with Bill. Instead, they went with Raheem Morris. Now, I told you before all of this, when Vrabel was still the coach, and we were talking about whether or not Vrabel was going to get fired, if I had told you that Mike Vrabel's going to get passed over for Raheem Morris, would you have believed me? And you know the answer is no. What about all these other jobs? Washington came open. The Panthers came open. And not one of these teams. I think there were a lot of people like me that were wondering when Seattle decided to part ways with Pete Carroll, that started to wonder, okay, is this a move for Vrabel? You know, it was a shocking move. Diana Rossini had said on Robbie and Joe after Vrabel got fired, she said that there was this sentiment around the league that Vrabel's available. Well, I might fire my coach now to go hire Mike Vrabel. And so here's Vrabel. He's available. And now Pete Carroll's fired? Like, is that the shock? Nope, not interested. I mean, I know a lot of us can be excited or laugh or make fun of or whatever you want when it comes to Vrabel not getting a job. But you can't tell me that you're not shocked that he's not getting a job. I am shocked that Mike Vrabel has a job or doesn't have a job. Shocked by it. And I do think there are some places where Mike Vrabel could go and coach, and, well, quite frankly, I think Mike Vrabel could win. One texter says the Titans fans' biggest victory in franchise history is Mike Vrabel not getting a job this year. Boy, that's harsh. You guys are harsh sometimes. Another texter into the text line says, when it comes to Vrabel, all three, Heap, Carroll, and He, Carroll, and Belichick, all three stink. The two oldies are past their prime, and Vrabel is getting what he deserves. See, the problem is, though, with Carroll and Bill, I think there's a legitimate chance that they're done. Like, I think there is a legitimate chance that Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick will never be head coaches in the NFL. I don't know if Bill would be good on TV. I don't know if Bill wants to do TV. I don't know. But I think that, again, if you're too old at 72, you're not going to be any younger at 73. I think Vrabel will get a head coaching job next year. There's going to be about 7 of these a year. And so 7 are going to come open. And a couple of the coordinators that are hot this year, like Ben Johnson, like Bobby Slowick, they'll get some jobs. There'll be a new flavor of the month coordinator or two that'll get a job. And then there'll be Vrabel. So he will get a job next year. And remember, slow and steady wins the race. But again, I am shocked. And I haven't seen one person text into the text line saying that, oh, yeah, no, I was shocked that Vrabel didn't get a job. Come on now. One texter says, you talk about the money being real. Well, the money that Amy Adams Strunk is having to pay Vrabel and John Robinson to not work is real. It's about the price of a corner. One corner. We're talking like, what? $12 million probably? What she's paying per year on Vrabel and Robinson not working. I mean, that's not free, but it's not, the end-all, be-all of cash. 615-737-1025. Yesterday, Barry Trotz was on with us, which means Jared versus Joe today. That's next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. It is, well, I was going to say Wednesday at 5 o'clock. It's actually Thursday, but yesterday Barry Trotz was on our program. So it's time for Jared versus Joe. Caroline is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Oh, we're doing. Now,
Peachy.
That being said, Joe's got us on a clock, so let's go ahead and get with it, Ian.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville.
All right, Jared, you go first. How concerned are we that Rand Carthon is not at the Super Bowl, Senior Bowl?
Oh, I don't like it. And, I mean, again, like they hired Denard Wilson today and they hired a wide receivers coach today, and that's great. But I thought you did the hiring at the Senior Bowl. I thought that you could do the interviews at the Senior Bowl. What I don't like, and I think this is where a lot of the league is now, is this idea that, hey, we can do all of that stuff remotely. Like, we can watch the Senior Bowl tape, and we can send our guys out there that can meet with these prospects, and we can do all of that remotely. They can funnel the information back. Then we'll go to the combine. And it's basically relying on other people and just true delegation. And I wouldn't feel comfortable about that if I were the general manager myself. Because at the end of the day, I'm the one who's getting fired and hired based upon the players that we pick. And it would make me very, very nervous if I had questions about a player, but I didn't have time to meet with him at the combine, and I could have met with him at the Senior Bowl, and the scout didn't ask the exact question that I really wanted to know about this player because I wasn't totally sure at the time, and it could get lost in translation or telephone or whatever. And these Titan scouts are not Rand Carthon scouts. These are John Robinson scouts. So Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan have an opportunity to collect information, and they didn't do it. And I think players are more important than coaches, and so I think that getting the right players, I think they're both important, don't mistake me here, but I think that getting the right players is more important than getting the right coaches, and this was an opportunity for information gathering, and they let somebody else do it instead of doing it themselves. It makes me nervous. I don't like it.
I mean, I'm not surprised at all that Jared is making a big deal out of this because Jared makes mountains out of molehills.
Everybody keeps saying I'm making a big deal out of this. I'm not making a big deal out of this. I just said I don't like it.
How many segments have you spent on it this week?
I don't know. 10.
Yeah, dude. Is that all? Oh, well, I take it back. Yeah, I can't summon outrage on this. I just can't. I don't. Just like Jared, I don't know the conversations. I don't know the strategy. I don't know what they've talked about. I do know that, yeah, you're right. A lot of these scouts, most of these scouts are still left over from the previous regime, but Carthon's chosen number 2 and number 3 are there. So I really couldn't care less. All the information's available. And look, I mean, different teams do it different ways. That's what we talked about on our show. It's like wild the way the Rams have started handling I think that's crazy. And then they just had one of the best drafts we've seen in a while last year. So, I just can't summon the outrage. I can't believe it's just an off-the-hip decision. I have to think that there's strategy to it, and the information's all available. I heard TD trying to talk you off this earlier, and I'm just going to echo what he said. I don't know that it matters if you've gone or not, but bottom line is the information is all there to be dissected.
Well, I mean, again, I think a lot of this, too, is the fact that, the guy that I used to work with lived and died by the Senior Bowl. And I also think, too, like I was thinking about this during the week, which is when's the last time Rand Carthon, really sat down and spoke to the media outside of that press conference at the end of the year where he was kind of just pleading the fifth the whole time? Because he was put in a weird situation with the firing of the most popular coach maybe the franchise has ever had. And it's like, if Rand Carthon had a press availability after the Brian Callahan hiring, he could have been asked about, what are your plans on building the staff? And then he could have explained why he decided not to go to the Senior Bowl. And if that explanation made sense, then it may be something where I'm like, okay, like I see what they're saying. I get it. But we don't have any of that because he doesn't tell anybody anything.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, we're going to hear from him in about a month, at the combine when it's basically mandated, for all those guys who go to have a session. And I think that's something that he needs to adjust, pretty significantly in year 2 with the different setup and the clear communication that it's his show. I don't disagree with that.
Caroline?
All right, on to the next. If T. Higgins does become available, whether it's a tag and trade or a trade now, what would you be willing to give up for T. Higgins if you were the general manager of the Titans? Joe, you go first.
Oh, God, I'm bad at these. I'm bad at the, what's the proper, amount to give back for someone in a trade. I like T. Higgins a lot.
Not a very good fake GM, Joe.
I know. I like him a lot. I think he's a number 1 receiver on a lot of teams in this league. You always have a little bit of trepidation. The actual number 1 receiver is so good and takes such attention the way Jamar Chase does. Like Corey Davis, 1,000-yard receiver, not really, right? I mean, he benefited a lot from Henry and Brown in that year, and it got him paid. But he's not on his own 1,000-yard receiver in this league. He never was. But that said, I think T. Higgins is really freaking good. Trade a first-round pick. I mean, if we're going to go draft capital, I think I might consider a second as the primary centerpiece, and then whatever you swap picks or whatever else goes into it. But I think my ceiling would be a second.
You would deal the 24 second?
Oh, I don't know. Can I just say a second?
No, because mine is the 25 second.
The 25 second? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then you know what? I'll argue with you, and I'll give up the 24 second. I don't like giving up the 24 second, but you got a number 1 receiver who's young in his prime, and if you could pick with your second round pick this year, a receiver of his quality at his age, I know the money's more, but so yes, I'll give this year's up.
So I would agree with you that I think that you're infinitely more likely to land him with this year's second than you are with next year's second, because this year's second, they know where it is and they can use it right now. I just don't think T. Higgins is really, really good. I don't know that T. Higgins is worth the 7th overall pick in the draft. I think we can all agree he's probably not. And because, again, you're factoring in that you have to give him the big contract too. So when it comes to Higgins, I'd offer the 25 second. I don't think they'd take it. I think they'd get a better deal out there for Higgins. But I think that the Titans, if they give away a pick in next year's draft, can make up for it on draft night by trading out of the 7th slot. So they can go into this, let's say they deal the 25 second for T. Higgins and they give him $125 million, which is what they're going to have to do. Let's say they do that, they get T. Higgins, then they go into the draft, and at 7 they can say, hey, if this one guy is there, and we love him, if Roma Dunze, who Daniel Jeremiah compares to Larry Fitzgerald, if Roma Dunze is there, we take Roma Dunze. If not, then we trade out of the pick, and we can recoup the pick that we lost for T. Higgins, knowing that we still have that 7th pick today that we can barter with. So that would be the way I would go about doing it. The other thought I had is this. Would you think about Simmons? Would you think about Simmons straight up for a number 1 receiver? Again, I think Higgins is like a low-end one, where Chase, I think, is a high-end one, where Justin Jefferson's a high-end one. I think Higgins, again, is a lower-end one. But would you deal Jeffrey Simmons? And the reason I ask this question is because Cincinnati has a lot of money committed to offense. They're going to give Jamar Chase a huge contract. It's probably going to be about $30 million in cash this year. So if they're going to spend money, it's going to be on defense. Well, if they get Jeffrey Simmons, they plug him right in there with Hendrickson and Hubbard and those guys, and that might be one of the best fronts in the NFL. But what did Brian Callahan say last week on this program? He likes the elite guys that score touchdowns over the elite guys that don't score touchdowns. So it could be, in theory, a swap where you're taking Simmons, dealing him, keeping your picks for your young guys, and you're getting that number one receiver in exchange. And then the Bengals don't have to spend as much money, and you don't have Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I mean, to me, you're
you traded for Bryce Young.
Hey, what's your beef with Bryce Young?
I know, but T. Higgins is a more established NFL player than Bryce Young.
Duh.
To me, the timeline of Jeffrey Simmons, he should have 2 or 3 more really, really high end years, and if you trade him away, your defense is so gutted. So even if you get everything figured out on the offensive end, now you got a huge hole in the middle of it, and I do believe that Jeffrey Simmons has made lots of guys on that defense look better by virtue of his performance and his presence in there. I wouldn't do that, because to me, you have to be on the timeline. I think everybody in this league basically all the time of, okay, in the next couple years, can we rally up and go make a run? And I think if you take him out of there, that's just too much rebuilding now you have to do on that side of the ball.
I wouldn't want to do it. I'd consider it, though, because I don't think that a second-round pick – I think there might be a team that deals a first-round pick for Higgins. I've been thinking about this in my head. Is Higgins the same as A.J. Brown when the Titans traded A.J. Brown?
Yeah, I think A.J. Brown's a tick ahead of that.
Because that was a first and a third for A.J. Brown. And so it's would a second really get Higgins done?
And it's tough, too, to evaluate because T. Higgins is on such a great receiving core. He's a 2 to Jamar freaking Chase.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown was this team's 1. So
Right.
what would T. Higgins look like as the guy?
A.J. Brown was more demonstrated as a difference maker to me at that point because of how he had carried that offense in 21 for many weeks without Derrick Henry.
Then I think it might have to be Simmons. Simmons or the 7th overall pick.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. More Jared versus Joe continuing next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Presented by Pella Windows and Doors in Nashville. Caroline, go.
Jared, you go first. Did Dan Campbell blow the Lions' chances to go to a Super Bowl?
Yes. Yes, he blew it with stupidity, with ego, and for some reason the analytic community, which I don't even think Dan Campbell is a part of, they've accepted him as their martyr. It's no, you people won't understand how the game works. You guys are dinosaurs. You don't understand that the numbers say that you don't need the 17-point lead against Brock Purdy, that it doesn't matter, that you could have, that you're better off 14 or trying to get to 21. I feel so bad for Lion fans because, as Dan Campbell said after the game, rightly, it's going to be 2 times, 3 times as hard to get back next year. I remember when the Tennessee Titans lost the Super Bowl by a yard. And quite frankly, I think the Titans lost that Super Bowl by a yard because they played a bad first half in that Super Bowl. And everybody in town was like, okay, we lost by a yard this year, but next year we're going to win the whole thing. And they were 13-3. They were the best team in the NFL. And a bad game against the Ravens, and they're home, no Super Bowl. It is so hard. The Super Bowl was in his hands. In his hands. And he decided to throw the ball to Josh Reynolds. Yes, Dan Campbell's to blame.
Yeah, look, I have to give him the bulk of the blame. The only thing I would argue with on Jared is, and I mean, it is well documented, the Lions do. They go heavy on the analytics and probabilities and stuff like that. But that said, he still does reckless stuff. I mean, there's no justification for the just keep going for 2 in Dallas crap, right? And sometimes you have a fake punt on Thanksgiving against the Packers is just idiotic. Coaches make mistakes. And look, the only thing I would say about this whole, I agree with Jared. To me, I know Badgley hasn't been great, but he has been better lately. And if you have a chance to go up 17 and just keep pushing that clock back and put them right back at 3 possessions, I love it there, and I think you have to try to tie it late rather than do it. Now, is it true also that Josh Reynolds is to blame? Yeah, man. Catch the freaking ball. And also catch later the wide-open third down. They had a fumble. There's a lot of things that went into it. But, yes, I have to put Dan Campbell first on the list, and we haven't talked about the worst decision, which was the third down and goal, which I guess you could put on Ben Johnson for calling the play. But then Dan Campbell's got to say, dude, you can't run here, because if we run here and lose our last timeout, now an onside kick is our only way to come back. If they score there with 3 timeouts, you can kick deep, and you got a great chance to get a field goal and go to overtime. But they totally botched that. That is absolutely horrific coaching at the end of the game. So since the question is just, did he cost him? Yeah, that counts big in the answer of yes.
The one thing I do want to know is, does Dan Campbell have the analytics guys in his headset and they're telling him to go for it or not? Or is he sitting there on the sideline saying, hey, we're going to go for it. That's who we're going to be. We're going to be that team that goes for it. And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that it's him.
It's like the second one. It seems like the second one, but, I mean, it's been reported, they're big on that, so I don't know if it's headset right at the moment, beeping in, but they have the data of the probabilities. It's not just like freewheeling, gunslinging ball coach.
Caroline.
All right. Should the Predators trade UC Saros? Joe, you go first.
Answering this is I need to know the return, but if it's good, yes. If it's good,
what's good?
I see. You're making me play. Now you're making me play fake hockey GM after being fake football GM.
You're a man of many talents, Joe.
Yeah, to me, it's a difference making, if not forward in the NHL now, a high level. Preferably centerman, picks, can be part of it and all that, but there's got to be a proven commodity to help drive offense coming back. If you can get that, then I think you do. I'm not sitting here saying that this season disappointing, and he's around a 901 save percentage. Even last night, he gave in a goal you can't give up, or else maybe they win that game. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, he's on his way down, and he's just going to circle the drain. But $8.5 million a year that you're paying him if you sign him to a new deal, and Askarov has been a hope so far, and all indications this year are that he's going to be special. It's a risk because who knows? Sometimes guys have a ceiling. You think they're going to get to it, and they get 2/3 of the way there, or whatever. And he's a little bit of a loose cannon, maybe, But I think that's your answer. If you have that guy at the price control, you'll have him. I think you're going to just end up with a better hockey team over the next few years than if you were sitting there with Saros at 8.5 AAV. So I got to say yes, if the return's good enough.
So I would agree. I think they need to trade him because this will probably be when his value is at the highest. I think it would be higher now than it would be in the summer simply because you're getting 2 playoff runs with UC Saros, and that probably has to be factored in the price. Secondly, I don't think the Predators will be cup contenders over the next 2 years, this year and next year, which means that Saros' deal would be up by the time that they were cup contenders. And quite frankly, I don't think you draft Yaroslav Askarov as high as they did to not be your goalie when he has proven that he is the future. And if you want to season him some more in Milwaukee, they do have the option of playing Kevin Lankinen for the rest of the year. They're not going to win a ton of games doing that. They're not going to lose a ton of games doing that with Lankinen. But I think it's enough that if they needed him to be the Band-Aid for the rest of the season, that they could do it. So I think it's a yes, and I just think the time is now, and I hate it because I like them, but I think they need to do that. Caroline, who wins this week?
All right. I actually, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world, but I do find it a little bit odd that Rand isn't at the Senior Bowl. It's not the end of the world, but I do just kind of assume that he's there, and I find it a little bit odd that he's not. And I want to know what he's been doing since he is not, and I would assume helping work on the coaching staff, but, isn't that Brian Callahan's job? So I just have questions. Jared wins this week.
All right.
My goodness. Well, he does have coaching oversight.
Well, yes, but, just because that's the job description, isn't it also in his job description to scout?
Yes.
Ooh.
But the question is, is it worth the outrage that Jared summons?
No.
In most cases.
How many things are worth the outrage that Jared summons?
Yeah.
I'm not outraged. I just said I don't like it. And then everybody got mad that I said I don't like it because if I say anything about Rand, everybody gets mad. And so then it shames me from having my own opinions about Rand. And I'm like, well, I can't do that because I got to do my job and tell people what I think.
Don't be shamed out of your opinions. If you haven't been shamed out of your opinions yet, don't start now.
He's shamed out of a lot of things. Guys, thank you so much.
That's
Jared
a fair
versus
point.
Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Coming up next, Titans free agency. Jared's first look ahead of what they might need and who it might truly be. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I think Rand said it before, and I believe it. Really, to my core, is that they want a partnership. I think Rand and I are going to build a great one. That I don't have any doubt about. And so that to me is the starting point. Is the personalities to mesh and fit and build a partnership with a vision towards building a football team that's got the ability to have sustained success. And I can't answer more of that. Maybe they can chime in, but that to me was the biggest part, is that we were forming a partnership and a relationship that we're going to work really hard together. I love Rand's line. You say it one more time, Rand, about hunting.
At the same time isn't the same as hunting together.
Hunting at the same time isn't the same as hunting together. And, we're going to hunt together.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan at the press conference last week. And so here's what I want to do. So I've got what I call the ION list. These are the people. Free agency, everybody just looks at, pulls up some website, says, okay, this guy's going to be free agent, this guy's going to be. We don't know what the free agent list is going to look like yet. We will know in about a month what it'll look like, because that's when the franchise tag dates are coming up, and that's when you're getting close to the new league year. Guys will get cut because they don't want to pay them. And so the free agent list will be much deeper than this. But when it comes to free agents, it's not like the Titans are going to go out and all of a sudden sign T. Higgins if he ends up getting there, which I don't think he will. But they won't trade for T. Higgins and signed a top-of-the-market tackle and signed a top-of-the-market corner and all of those things. It's just not likely to happen. Like, they're not going to sign Chris Jones and trade for T. Higgins, and you have to sign the right free agents. Now, Brian Callahan has some experience with this because that's what they did in Cincinnati when they went and signed Trey Hendrickson, and they added the offensive line a year later. I mean, Sam Hubbard and other guys. So this is my initial list of just guys I'm just keeping an eye on. And then I keep these names in check because I know that if you really want one of these guys, you can buy them. What does that mean? You can buy them? Yes, you can buy. The way Jacksonville bought Christian Kirk a couple of years ago, you can buy a player who is not top-of-the-market guy. If you've got a top-of-the-market guy, you got to shoot and hope that you've got the highest offer out there, and you're going to have to reset the market, and even then you might not get him. You got a guy who's a decent player, but you want to make sure you have that player? Well, the going rate's $8 million probably. Pay $11, you got him. So if you want one of these guys, for sure you can get them. Here are the guys I have that I'm pretty sure will be free agents, and I would have my eye on. The first one is Hollywood Brown, the wide receiver at Arizona. Hollywood Brown is not overly productive. He was drafted in the first round by the Ravens. He never really popped. He's kind of like Corey Davis in the sense that he's not that good, but he's also not that bad. But he is more available than Davis. And unlike Davis, his biggest strength as a wide receiver, Ian, is to what?
Go deep?
Run. Hollywood Brown's not going to cost you top of the market money. It's probably going to cost you about $16 million. But I would just keep an eye. Keep an eye on that. Then maybe you don't have to get a T. Higgins. I mean, again, Higgins is a much better player, but I just feel like, just keep an eye on him. Kyle Duggar, the safety in New England. He's a very good safety. He is going to be a free agent. I highly doubt the Patriots are going to franchise tag a safety. They're rebuilding. Kyle Duggar is the kind of guy that you can come in, pay high dollars to at safety, and then say, okay, we're good. Duggar and Hooker, let's worry about corner in the draft. We're good at safety, don't have to think twice about it, and he is a very good player. So I got Kyle Duggar there. I got Kevin Dodson, the left guard, of the LA Rams. Now, the problem is he'd have to play right guard here because obviously Peter Skoronski's your left guard, but he was a very solid player, runs a similar kind of offense. Robert Hunt, the guard in Miami. Now, that might be top of the market money for a guard. And I don't know what that dollar figure is. I think it's 21 is Chris Lindstrom in Atlanta. If you want to make sure that you get Robert Hunt, we might be talking about $20 million. I'm not sure I would want to do that, but we'll just keep an eye on that. Williams, the center in Miami. I've got three centers that I'm looking at that I'm like, hey, these three guys probably all should be on the list of true starting centers in the NFL. Aaron Brewer Hate to say it, he's not a starting center in the NFL. You know that. I know that. We all know that. So there's Williams in Miami. There's Lloyd Cushenberry in Denver. And there's Tyler Biotish, the center of the Cowboys. I don't think anybody is going to franchise tag a center. Now, remember, one thing to worry about is that sometimes teams will sign their own guys right before the start of the league year or right before free agency opens because we like him. We want to get a deal done with him. He wants to be here. He likes us. Let's work out the deal so he doesn't hit free agency. Couple of more guards. John Runyon Jr., of the Green Bay Packers. I liked him coming out of Michigan in the 2020 draft. He's a starter. Again, LaFleur, same offense, and he can play right guard. I like him. I like his dad, and his dad was a mean old man when he played right tackle for the Titans. John Simpson, the guard at Baltimore. I think he got a couple of bad penalties the other day, but he's a solid player. Ben Powers left in free agency. They elevated John Simpson. John Simpson had a good year, so he's on the list. Then I got a couple of others that I don't want you to get mad at me about. Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville. Ridley is a question mark. You know, would he be the kind of guy who, once he gets a payday, all of a sudden isn't the same player? Isn't the same guy, isn't the same player, he got his money, he's happy, he's good, and I don't know the answer to that. But Ridley does have talent. And that was obvious watching the Jags play. And again, I'm keeping DeAndre Hopkins, so I have Hopkins and him, and then I'm still probably going to end up drafting a receiver because I got to get young there. And then this starting NFL corner, he takes the place of either Fulton or Sean Murphy-Bunting, but he was kind of the lead dog in that secondary in Cincinnati. Now, Jesse Bates was there as a safety, but as far as a corner is concerned, Awuzie was very consistent for the Bengals, and he's always been a guy that, you know, again, I respect his game, and that's the kind of free agent, kind of like a Ben Jones, that you sign. It doesn't make any massive headlines, but then during the season, you will be happy and should be happy that you acquired Chidobe Awuzie. So that's kind of my first list of odd names I'm keeping an eye on, just because if you can knock those things out, then you don't necessarily have to go all in with the chips in the draft to fill all of your holes. 615-737-1025. The phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mark in Clarksville has been waiting patiently and is up next here on Stillman and Company. What's up, Mark?
Hi, Jared. I appreciate your musings on the draft. It's going to be fun to see how we acquire our players.
I hope.
I just have a slightly a little bit off topic question, but just was wondering, do you think it is customary for the outgoing coach to chit chat with the incoming coach, maybe over a beer or maybe even a formal meeting? I think Vrabel's still getting a paycheck from the Titans. So is there any obligation? Is there any desire?
No.
Or does it happen organically? I'll just listen.
Yep, thank you, Mark. I don't think so. You know, I don't think this is like the White House where Mike Vrabel went in his office the day that the Titans hired Brian Callahan and left a little note on the desk saying, you know, to Brian, I am rooting for your success for our country. I don't think that's what they do. I mean, the way it's kind of described to me in the NFL, the way that this business operates, and it does seem a little callous, but I also think a lot of other businesses are like this too. I don't think the NFL is any different. Is you're fired, you leave. But my guess is Mike Vrabel walked into that meeting with Burke Nihill and Amy Adams-Strunk, and they fired him. And when they fired him, he left the building. And then people that worked there packed up his office and sent it to his house. And I feel pretty certain about that because a year after Floyd died, we had a party for him at, just kind of like a memorial party at his house. And Ian, were you with, and I know you're on the phone right now, but were you with us when we went through all those boxes, or had you already left by then?
I had already left.
Okay, so there were all these boxes in the garage. And so Floyd had told me for years that his old draft boards and stuff like that were all in the garage. Because I want to know, what was your scouting report on Tom Brady before the 2000 draft? And every time he used to say, oh, I got all that stuff in my garage. So we're at Floyd's house. He's been gone for a year. We're celebrating the life of a great man. And I went to Sean, his son, and I said, hey, your dad used to say that he had all this stuff in the garage. Can we look for it? He's like, I don't think it's down there, but you can look for it. So we started opening all these boxes. And it was Floyd's office packed up from when he was with the Titans. A painting, for instance, of Frank Wycheck turning around, throwing the football in the Music City Miracle. It was just like office stuff. All the mini helmets of all the teams of the league. They said he used to put them up there like how they were ranked in the divisions. That was what was up there. No Tom Brady scouting reports, no draft boards. But again, they packed up his office for him. So as far as, does Brian Callahan talk to Mike Vrabel? Probably not. Unless there's something that Mike Vrabel wants Brian Callahan to know, then he might reach out. If it's about a particular assistant coach or something like that. But no, once you're fired in the NFL, for the most part, that's it. See ya. And it's cutthroat. But then again, that's how a lot of jobs are. 615-737-1025. We'll hit more of your phones here on the program. 615-737-1025. That's right. It is time to talk about how great White Bison is at Twice Daily. Stay warm and cozy with their new honey-based drinks. The Cinnamon Beehive Latte, the Iced Honey Nut Macchiato, the Vanilla Rooibos Tea Latte. White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. Download the app and order ahead. And when you download the Twice Daily and White Bison app, you can enroll in the rewards program so you can place orders on the go anytime automatically and earn on every purchase. Download the app to order ahead, earn rewards, and get one free coffee every time you buy 7. That's part of White Bison's rewards. Buy 7, get 1 free. That's White Bison and Twice Daily, fresh all day. Stillman and Company. Ian, I'm going to make a declaration right here.
All right.
By the way, I would like to say Hal Gill normally joins us. He is on to the All-Star break, so he normally joins us presented by Duncan. Hal
Which
loves
beach
Duncan.
is he headed to?
I don't know. But he was delayed in his flights earlier today. He was texting me. He had a little frustration there. So Hal usually presented by Duncan, so we'll catch up with Hal after the All-Star break, and we'll catch up with Barry Trotz after the break. So many people are annoying me one way or another, and even if you don't mean to annoy me, it is now becoming annoying. When it comes to Rand Carthon not being at the Combine, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I just don't like it, right? That's how I felt. Well, so many people have annoyed me about it that now, guess what? I don't care anymore. And does it make you feel better to say that he now has my blessing to have not attended the Combine? Does that make everybody feel better? I'm going to take that as a yes. Travis is up next here on our program. He's been waiting patiently. What's up, Travis?
Hey, man, I just want to tell you, look, man, I'm ready to eat some crow. And I'm going to say this. Dude, when I first started listening to you back in the day, pretty much, I was like, man, this guy doesn't even like the Titans. Dude, you are a Titans fan from what the guy told me. And then I want to say this. If Mike Vrabel is so sold out and the best coach, why is he not already a head coach somewhere? I mean, that's just my question. Maybe him and Bill Belichick could get with the XFL or maybe go overseas and dismantle a team somewhere else. I mean, look, there were so many bonehead plays, and I look back at our schedule, and I'm like, dude, we barely lost these games. And, maybe if we lost those games, it was a lesson learned. But, here's the deal. Man, a team is only as good as their head coach. And
Okay,
man,
so I want to start, Travis.
apologize.
Travis, I think that's a good call. I want to start on the Vrabel front, the Belichick front. First of all, those guys are making millions and millions of dollars this year to not work. So and I'd say it's a little embarrassing that given the hype of, this coaching free agency that they're like, nah, we'd rather have Mike McDonald. And I don't mean that as a knock against Mike McDonald. I'm just saying, when Diana Rossini is telling people that teams will fire their coaches in order to hire Mike Vrabel for nobody to do that, including teams that in the playoffs gave their coaches out or gave their teams outs. McCarthy, Sirianni, McDermott, that gave their Campbell, that gave their teams reasons to fire them inside the playoffs. And nobody wanted them? I mean, that is something. Now, that being said, if I were Vrabel and I didn't get a job, I don't know about you guys, you talk about going to coach the XFL, that would not be happening. I would be going to Jamaica, and I would be finding some of the best Jamaican influence, and I would be there for about a month and a half. And then I'd probably gain about 60 pounds. Let's go to Cam, who's up next here on our program. Thank you for calling. What's up, Cam?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Good.
Okay, so, we did an experiment today. I volunteer at the local mission here in town and try to help where I can.
Sure.
There are a lot of people that call into your show, specifically just your show, and after they get hung up on, they feel some type of way. And I tried to tell them because I participate in the show, and it was a casual conversation that blew up into something way more than I thought it was going to be.
At the local mission?
Yes. Like these guys devout every day between 2 and 5 or 2 and 6 to listen to your show. And I just want you to take consideration of that. You know what I mean? Because we were talking about it today, and I was talking about how I said, I donate my time. I was talking about how I call in and I'm a big fan and this, that, and the other. And the guys were like, oh, we call and he just does this. So we don't call anymore. And I said, well, you just have to say, it's just how Jared. But what I'm saying is just take that into consideration moving forward.
I will take it into consideration, Cam. Good call. Thank you. And thank you for donating your time to the mission. I don't know what to say. I'm just going to say that, get on, make the point, get out. I think we're good. I just kind of how I operate a little bit, but always open for constructive criticism. I'm cool with that one way or another, but who knows? One texter into the text line says, One texter into the text line basically says that I should not walk my stance back on the Senior Bowl. I guess I just don't care enough anymore. I was like, every time I say something, people get mad. And I'm like, you know what? If everyone's going to get mad about it, then I'm not going to care. I'm not going to care. I've said my piece. I just don't like it. I don't like it enough to make it a 3-day thing. But I just don't like it. We got a big one. Celtics-Lakers, the old school rivalry. That's coming up next. Stillman and Company. See you tomorrow at 2.